this a single room? Space, tech, dragonborn magic, and more. Then why the fuck am I bored? I mean, okay, it's fine, it's not bad, it's boring. But hold on. Isn't it worse than being bad? Oh no!
Where do I begin? No, seriously, where do I begin? As I was structuring and putting together this review, I really didn't know what smelly orifice should I get into first. Do I go into this whole thing as a pathetic fanboy of Skyrim? Or do I just simply go with a cold, calculated approach? Or perhaps I just meme all over it? Well, either which case, I guess, forgive my lack of structure and weird writing, I guess, but I just simply had to try and put something together, and this is what happened. Over 2, maybe even 3 hours of a review for Starfield. Here we go.
To get you up to speed, here's a quick-ish summary of what happened. Before the release, Starfield was hinted as long back as 2018. Unless of course you count the trademark name filings, the development started around 2016 at the end of Fallout 4.
Starfield is our first new universe in over 25 years.
Not 25 years ago. Now, what people expected from Bethesda was simple: Skyrim or Fallout in space. And so the first actual gameplay bits we saw led to some conclusions. Oh, but that's No Man's Sky! But more realistic. Regardless, due to Microsoft acquisition, Bethesda were, shall we say, encouraged not to release on PlayStation.
A groundbreaking game. And yes, it's exclusive.
But it also would be released on PC too? So hold on, Phil Spencer, what the fuck does exclusive mean?
Biggest and most ambitious role-playing games that's been 25 years in the making.
And then later, before the release, AMD partnered with Starfield and people got pissed. However, what was weirding out people even more was the actual recommended specs for the game. Now on Steam, the recommended asks for RTX 2080 Ti or RX 6800 XT. But then Bethesda publishes the all AMD recommended spec sheet, which for the even 1080p gaming includes a more powerful GPU alone. Bizarre. And even so, why are these specs so monstrously high? Is it another Redfall incident? Because even at the time, from the trailers, you could tell that the game was, well, mediocre at best looking.
And then no wonder when the peasant boxes can't run it on 60 FPS.
Then came the time for the release.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us today and welcome to Bethesda Game Studios.
Now, of course, the game had the dirty, disgusting early release week for the deluxe $100 purchases, because of course it did. On day one, reviews came out flying from all sorts of outlets that got the early review copies, but me and my creator colleague were baffled. Neither one of us got an early access copy, and yet some small, genuinely small channels got them. So bizarre. No, of course I ain't bitter, but what of course followed with these reviews were, expectedly, industry circle jerky stuff.
Now, aren't those reviews rather interesting to read, especially now after the release? Oh boy, and indeed, for context reasons, Bethesda is generally the gaming industry's, at least the western side of it, darling for the majority of shall we call them sycophants? Because they sure as hell aren't journalists or media people. They just simply throw the critical thinking and credibility out the window. However, you see, for the next pig slop eating contest, of course you do want to be invited now, wouldn't you? So the bell curve pretty much goes out the window immediately. So hence the 10 out of 10s literally everywhere across the board. Well, 9 out of 10s here and there, but you get the point. After all, why engage the brain, right? It's just the needless muscle there, or pile of neurons there in your skull sponge. So yeah, everyone's gonna like it. It's a popular game after all. It's made by the beloved Bethesda. So why engage the brain? And it's just simpler to throw out a 10 out of 10. But then we have something interesting coming up, and a review like this kinda stands out.
And this was met with angry fanboys and utterly disgusting and shameful behavior from a lot of these sources. Yet, this man, though a bit too generous in my opinion, still would be proven right in the end. Now, I have to mention a little discrepancy here for the first reveal gameplay trailer and the actual game itself. Now, of course, it's not the levels of misrepresentation like Star Citizen, but it does have plenty of differences. Weirdly, the coloring overall is the biggest one, which for the game release they cranked up to ugly ass filters and whatnot else, making the game actually look worse in my view. But anyways, then this happened.
Sorry, did you want to get immersed in our world? Yeah, well, guess what? Fucking pronouns!
Mind you, Babyface here is up in arms about the ideology being inserted into everything, but we'll get to that. Safe to say, his ideas are just stupid, and so were the Act Man, who basically clowned on Babyface afterwards too. Both of them have idiotic ideas and approach, more to follow, but first... me! Yes, even I got some weirdos to deal with. Now, upon my quote-unquote review, release, and commentary, from time to time I got some vindictive, I take it PlayStation fanboys? Popping in on comment sections prattling on about console wars or something, while I was commenting and playing on the most superior platform, the PC Master Race. So that was weird, but regardless, basically the lesson. Bethesda brings out some incredible qualities in some special people indeed.
But speaking of my own review, in general terms, my conclusion was this.
It's just sad. There's so much good potential here, and yet it's ruined by the creation engine so hard. That's Starfield. It's definitely not bad, but if I had to choose between this and No Man's Sky, I'd probably go play Cyberpunk again.
However, I might need to revisit that. There's the open world and the spacey ships, which are ruined by the loading screens. Then there's the RPG, and of course choices you can make in the story, but none of them have consequences. And then of course we have the skills, plenty of them, as well as weapons, but those are ruined by non-existent balancing and lack of playtesting. And then most of all of it is done in the servers to make the game more grindy. And then there is this wonderful quote.
Big question from many. Why did you not optimize this game for PC?
We did. It's running great. It is a next-gen PC game. We really do push the technology, so you may need to upgrade your PC.
And granted, Starfield is the least buggy Bethesda game, which in of itself is a fucking miracle. Frame rates too are consistent. Well, they're consistently bad, but they're consistent. See, as the performance indicated from the pre-release early whatever week was very poor. A game that looks like this and barely runs 60 FPS, honestly speaking, is a utterly pathetic joke. Even if they put in notable work in the facial polygon counts and a few other places. Well, all the while, settings look more barren than an exploded uterus, missing texture, model complexity, anti-aliasing FOV, and other slider. Now, months after the release, the Steam numbers have plummeted under Fallout 4 and Skyrim. Bethesda also in their typical fashion are extremely hands-off, where updates and patches you can count on a single hand at best, which always has pissed me off. And only now we're hearing about the DLSS coming, when literally the next day after the launch, a modder was able to implement it. And then there were some talks about new features, and a few ones that should have existed on the launch, and the DLC that kind of was already implied on launch, but that's all set for 2024.
But you know what's more interesting? Well, in the first 2 months, Starfield's Steam score fell behind Fallout 76. Yes, Fallout 76. But in the recent times, Starfield's score has been even below that. For the last month, 30 days, the score has been mostly negative, with about 28% positive. Imagine that. Isn't it interesting? But that wasn't the most interesting thing. You see, for the Steam's awards, for the Game Awards, what they hand out from time to time, the most innovative game of 23 is, well, can you guess? Well, none other than Starfield itself. I tell you, fucking fanboys. But regardless, at that point, seems that Bethesda started getting pretty desperate, and their customer support started answering to negative reviews. Normally, as a Dusk developer has mentioned it, it can turn around a negative review. That didn't happen for Starfield. What happened was basically the same tone that they've been using for interviews and a few other places.
Because the true mark of being of a real developer is, as every developer knows, is waiting to come in, right? And then reading the reviews, of course, and hopefully, if you get lucky, ignoring the reviews, right? Thank you very much, guys.
Why did you not optimize this game for PC?
We did. It's running great. It is a next-gen PC game.
It's just patronizing people, saying that, well, you don't know how to make a game. Oh, but you don't know how much details or data takes, this procedural generation to make. Wow. Isn't that funny? And they answered to mine as well, but we'll get into that. For now, just enjoy the show. Alright, so while putting this together, I realized that to critique something essentially within it, you have to invoke 10 other things within the gameplay. Basically speaking, there's just no easy way to sort of structure this stuff without invoking 10 other things. So, let's just start with the stuff that I found good-ish or good enough and just go from there. God damn it, I need a drink.
Our mission was to convey the wonder and majesty of space exploration, to evoke the romance of the golden age of early spaceflight. And we've been referring to this approach as Nasapunk. This means a design language where the tech is advanced, yet still looks grounded and relatable.
Right then, Nasapunk. I absolutely hate it.
I hate olives, beets, pashtet, Star Wars, and dogs. However, I do recognize that each one has a good side, and I can even enjoy them. Well, maybe except for Star Wars. It's been taken over by sad man babies with no creative bone in their bodies or corporate hacks. Actually, come to think of it, same with Starfield. I hate the look of spaceships and guns. However, their design team did genuinely good job in putting together cohesive gear, setting, and pretty much everything else to make the visuals fit both in the time period as well as the tone they're going for. So here, good job. So then it baffled me that Bethesda artists decided to drink stupid juice and utterly ruin the visuals by plastering the screen with the 2020s version of the piss filter from Fallout 3 or New Vegas. Let's call it the Azure Vaseline. After installing Natural Lot mod, I realized just how good the game could have looked, and all that by just removing the idiotic, pretentious, dick-sucking filter.
Alright, let's move on and talk about my favorite thing. Guns.
So I really gotta wonder, are Bethesda artists even American? Seriously, for a country that's known for school shootings, you'd think that even kindergartners would know how ammo works. What? Then, after realizing the stupid mistake, Bethesda made a brilliant move to make a lot of guns use caseless ammo. Which frankly, I ain't even mad, but impressed. It's kind of a clever save. However, the cleverness impression soon after faded as soon as you looked at the guns themselves. Yeah, but Bethesda never had realistic weapons, so why do you care? So, hold on, that gives them free reign to be stupid? Oh, no, that bullshit ain't flying with me. Oh, here's a little interesting tidbit. Do you see the gun there? And the laser in front of it? Well, as soon as you start sprinting, it goes out of whack. Yay, Bethesda! Quality control number 1. Funnily enough, the science laser weapons are kinda the only ones that I can give a pass to. But when I see shit like this... Oh, for fuck's sakes, VSS is not a hunting rifle, it's a suppressed sniper rifle, what?
Holy Jesus. What is that? What the fuck is that?
Of course, then we have the mandatory over-designed bullshit with more pipes than Indian apartment complex. Or how about this universe's Desert Eagle, which basically is a Glock in a trench coat with a square barrel. Oh, space gun, Jesus, help me. Or what about those iron sights? Or the red dot? Safe to say, I could tear apart every single one of them, but the pattern does not change. Bethesda artists are basically sniffing their own farts so much that they've disconnected from this matrix, like all those Sigma dipshits keep talking about. Now as for the aliens, while being a No Man's Sky clone, Starfield does attempt some sort of spore-like creatures and monstrosities, but among the 1,000 or so planets to visit, you do sure find about maybe 20 different types of aliens, and, well, none of them are really that interesting. What's more disappointing, and here's a story spoiler, there are no intelligent aliens. Hell, the only alien disfiguration among humans is red eyes for the Martians. Oh, now we're making a sci-fi game. Jesus, Fallout even was more alien than this game. And you know, there aren't even any pets. 0 out of 10 game. Okay, but what about the ships? Well, as somebody known for reviewing Elite Dangerous and some Star Citizen ships, well, in Starfield they're meh. Pre-built designs and the whole Nasapunk aesthetic lend well to make the ships look like amorphous blobs to my eyes and nothing more. Now, what does redeem Starfield ships completely is the build your own ship mode, a favorite among all players. But now, onto the pain point of about 90% of the games, the UI. Now, Bethesda coming from incredibly wonderful beginnings. Horribly hackneyed, garbage, unwieldy, and utterly disgusting beginnings, they have, at least delivered an actually snappy UI for once.
Right then, the design is still garbage, but just like the special kid in the class, you still praise them for just simply gluing their hand to their face rather than setting everything on fire.
Now this design is garbage. See, it's not a 4-way menu, but a 6-way, and I only learned that after getting my first Space Dragon shell. Or what about inventory? Jesus, how hard is it to make a good inventory, or at least a normal one? Color coding certain types, sorting options, actually having proper categories, not putting food and medicines together, trading screen there you don't need to swap between the inventories and utterly confusing the player. What is this design? But then it makes it even more pathetic when modders in the first week made Star UI mod that added, well, at least half of the necessary functionality. Seriously, it's utterly embarrassing that one dude with a week of free time can do better job than an overpaid team of lobotomized monkeys. And then embarrassment continues with maps, or maybe I should say no local maps. Yep, that's right, there are no local maps. Well, unless of course your standards are lower than Bethesda's opinion of its own fan base. Yes, then piddling squirt of nothing that is this counts to you as a fucking map. And while somebody could excuse the proc-gen landing sites having simplified maps, what is utterly inexcusable are the town maps, or lack thereof. As in, they didn't exist on the launch, and only now, months after the launch, they figured, oh shit, people are kinda complaining about this, maybe we should make it? Maybe? Seriously, how could you think that it's not important to have? And the final nail in the UI coffin for me was the realization that you could press one button, say for example open a map, and then needing to press 2 or more buttons to close the same menu. Fuck me. Is this not a UI 101? You never designed something like this. And the fact that they put in hold to close button mechanism only makes it worse.
Start with music. Start with like the HUD. Like, what does it look like? Like, what's the game look like when I'm looking at it, playing it? Like, interface, I think, tells a story for a game, just in how it looks. We love to pack a ton of detail in every object, from all of your weapons, to spacesuits, to food. We just obsess over the details, and food. We obsess over food.
Granted, they put a lot of, well, no, not detail, but polygons into items and most notably character faces. And yet the non-named characters, the random NPCs on the street, look like this. And speaking of faces, well, it seems that Bethesda animators and artists learned that to have an expression, all you need is a smile, or no smile, and a lot of this. Oh, imagine, this was the range of emotion capability back in 2004.
Even if trouble does tend to follow in his wake.
Today, we're finally on the verge of having a better way. Oh, and by the way, nice to finally meet you.
You know, it's interesting. I heard this theory that because Vasco is able to spell out your name,
Captain Dick, Captain Assface, Captain Orgasmo,
they're using maybe some AI or algorithm stuff to fill in the blanks in many places. For example, probably that's how the animations or non-animations for character scenes happen, or mouth movements for the characters when they speak, rather than being animated individually. But that's just conjecture there. Though then again, considering the laziness of the UI design, honestly I wouldn't put it past them. Actually, come to think of it, that would probably explain a few things. But regardless, you, like me, probably are asking, well, why did they need to push so many polygons on many things, right?
Which is fine and dandy. However, seems Bethesda as a company are so shallow that they think
It is a next-gen PC game. It is a next-gen PC game.
constitutes oversaturating an environment with massive polygon models without actually adding better functionality, mechanics, or hell, even effects.
Well, come on! More polygons equals more next gen.
Let's then talk about the world. Possibly the biggest expectation from fans of Skyrim, like myself, or Fallout, were that the open world at least will be good, right? Well, visually we have established that it's a very mixed bag. But how is the wider world and the universe? Now, you can visit some iconic places in our solar system, especially Earth. However, everything else is just more proc-gen maps and, well, pretty standard, boring ones at that. It always breaks the illusion when instead of seeing Mount Everest, Fuji, or Grand Canyon, all you see is just plain old simple height map with sandy wastelands all around. Even understanding the limitations of this sort of a tech, you can't but to feel, well, disappointed. As for the overall planet tech, it's okay on first glance, but it soon blends together. There's just not enough variety to make each biome interesting. Though most of all, there was one thing that bothered me a lot. And again we're back at the topic of questioning the sanity of the Bethesda's art team. Have they ever seen a fucking meteor crater? For example, this is how a real crater looks in America. You know, on a planet with atmosphere, erosion, winds and more. While this is how Bethesda made a moon crater look like. Utterly ugly. I can't believe Bethesda managed to make craters one of the cooler planetary aspects of Outer Worlds. Disfigured and unrealistic to a point that I wonder why and how. But by all means, let's return to the cities. Now, of course, I'm not an urban planner nor an architect, but one thing I can tell you, these cities, even after 50 hours of gameplay, were confusing mess to walk in, where finding anything resulted in me getting more frustrated the longer I tried to understand the layout.
You know what could have solved that kind of a problem? A fucking map!
And speaking of bizarre choices, why is New Atlantis segmented in 2 platforms? Oh, maybe it's because to trick you into thinking that the so-called biggest city in Bethesda games is bigger than it actually is? Is that why you need to teleport? And no, not taking a train ride or an elevator, to teleport to get from place to place? Why is there no direct walkable path? Did the level designers not know how to do it? Or was the engine incapable of housing one unbroken city? It's funny that a killer city in comparison feels so much more larger, because it's not segmented and most importantly shops and NPCs are rather close by. It's stark contrast how actual level design of a killer trumps lazy artificial padding of New Atlantis. And by no means either city is not good, but at least you can see the differences already. And speaking of cities, there are about 4 main big cities among 100 or so star systems, with some minor mini cities sprinkled in here and there. and yet the universe of Starfield feels utterly void and empty. But not in a fun, space is empty way, but more like, what even was the point? Kind of an empty. And trust me, you'll get bored of these cities quickly enough since most of the plot and quests start or end there. So yes, you have the big open world, but the game itself constantly steer you between these 4 major points. So what the fuck was the point of this massive open world?
So then, that's the art style and the visuals of Starfield. Overall, I would say I absolutely hate the Nasapunk nonsense, but I respect it tremendously for its consistency and capability. You know, these things can work, even though you might dislike... Anyways, point is, the world itself is serviceable. Fundamentally, that is true, but the problems start to arise as soon as you start to pay more attention from your skull sponge, and it only gets worse the more you do it. For example, the UI is, sure, it's snappy, but it's still garbage. Very poorly planned out, and basically, I hate to use this thing Bethesda-like, but goddammit, Bethesda has this really awful air about their UIs. Always and constantly. Guns are just bafflingly stupid beyond belief, and when they're not over-designed, they're bland. And characters' props have such an amount of detail, or maybe I shouldn't really say detail. The amount of polygons in these props is quite high, but that's kind of the funny thing is, Bethesda seems to think that that's the only reason why they can say our game is next gen. Just because they pushed a few polygons more than the next guy. But taking a step back, looking at the visuals and the graphics themselves, overall I would say the game looks more closely to something that came from mid-2010s or early 2010s, not today. So basically, it is outdated already. So in the end, overall speaking about the visuals, Starfield basically looks bland at best, and worst, it's outdated. It's like looking at somebody create a Lada with new manufacturing and new technology, but remember, you're still creating garbage!
Wait, hold on. So I was looking up Lada, and I was looking for a specific picture, but then I found this. Business Insider reported that as a result of international sanctions imposed following 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine, Lada was forced to produce vehicles without airbags. No, blah!
And you know, it profoundly perplexes me to see somebody who's making a game about sci-fi, universe, exploration, and aliens even, and it being really boring.
Immediately, or do you start somewhere else when you begin development?
Well, that's, hats off to our design team led by Emil Pagliarulo, who I've worked with for, that's got to be over 20 years. It's one of the things that he starts with is, and we talk about, what's the feeling of the universe we're building? So it kind of starts with Emil in building out, here's the universe that we're playing in, and he and I talk about that. Istvan Pele as well, who's the art director on the project, brings a lot to that in terms of look and feel. And then just over time, again, this was a project that took many, many, many years. You're filling that out so that when you step into the game, you feel like it's something, it's almost like a series that existed before.
Well, that feeling translates into the gameplay the most, and boy oh boy, we got a lot to talk about here. See, from the interviews and press materials, it seems that Todd really wanted to emphasize the way the game feels, and those feelings. Yeah, that'll be funny later. But first, let's talk about my favorite part. The Murder Simulator! We start off with the biggest positive of all. The FPS gameplay is actually okay. Finally, after 2 decades, Bethesda learned how to make a shooter that didn't feel like greasing up yourself like a pig, slapping on a pair of rollerblades and wearing mittens while operating a literal shoulder-mounted nuke launcher. Shooting, aiming, even movement and vaulting feel responsive enough to be enjoyable. If you're 12 or something. However, if you've been playing shooters for a while, or even hell, sniffed them once in a blue moon, you'll probably find yourself wanting something a bit better. Alright, so let's get my hardcore tryhard boner out of the way. Guns, even when aiming down sights, have bloom, meaning that with recoil, even if you're aiming down sights, the gun might not shoot straight at all. See, this happens usually when the game developer doesn't know how to make good recoil mechanics in the first place, or need to limit the guns in some shitty way, but not to make your screen into a shaky cam from 2000s. Recoil shake is reduced, and bloom is introduced. Ultimately, this limits the gun's effective range and predictability, which clearly is not fun. But most of all, what pisses me off is the mere existence, or rather lack of existence, of balance. Fists are completely useless, melee weapons are slightly less useless, non-lethal weapons are pointless, pistols are notably underpowered, with maybe 1 or 2 exceptions, and even those mainly because of this. There we go. Wow, just melt! Oh my god! Oh my god! How did no one test this? Yep, and we'll get to reasons why this happens, but basically guns have not been balanced, and I suspect whoever was responsible for balancing the game basically went over stats once and said, yep, that's it, moving on. In fact, the same feeling I get from the alleged RPG stats, or traits for the guns of rare, epic and legendary status. A basic does 30% against humans, made out of a space magic and now weighs almost near 0 grams. Yay! Seriously, what the fuck is this? But even disregarding stats, it's just simply not interesting or unique. Sure, there are some quote-unquote special weapons, but most of them are just not comparable to something like, let's say, Valbajax or Euclid C Finder from Bethesda's other games. It just feels generic. I mean, for crying out loud, aren't you making a space, dragon shouty, gravity-defining space magic exploratory game? Get creative, make weapons that, I don't know, shoot another weapon or something because of magic. Or is that too much of a Borderlands thing? But regardless. So this was the point where I sensed that something was not right with the game. This was the first thing that made me think that Bethesda, despite their alleged experience in making games, doesn't know what the fuck they're doing. And so after this, I started keeping a list of little problems. And oh boy, here we go. You can't loot dead bodies fully, unlike Elder Scrolls or Fallout. There is no swimming, unlike in Fallout or Elder Scrolls. Saves don't have character names on them, nor images, unlike Fallout or Elder Scrolls. You need to quit the game to switch character save files. There's so little zero-G gameplay that I wondered why they bothered. You can't select multiple mission objectives, only one or all of them. There is no EVA at all. Once more, store clerks have way too little money, so that I'm left assuming that this is on purpose to waste your time sitting and passing time or going to other vendors and again wasting your time. And the list goes on. But if I may be a bit more positive here for a moment, pickpocketing has improved, now that you can pickpocket even while being seen just with a minus 40% success, which is a cool trade-off and I like it. Hacking/lockpicking, aptly named dick-picking by yours truly, on the other hand, is absolutely worse. Holy impaled space Jesus, who in their right mind thought that this minigame would be a good idea? Seriously, what was wrong with Skyrim or Fallout's lockpicking? It was very cool, very nice, and in fact, a little bit more realistic on a basic level.
Yeah, sure, it's not exactly like this, but, well, it's close enough for a video game, why not?
Oh, and it's also now a hacking minigame too. Is Bethesda seriously making the same mistake Human Revolution did when everything was locked with a keypad? And physical locks didn't exist in the world? What the fuck? Or, hold on, was it too fucking hard to copy-paste 2 minigames from your previous games? Oh, very futuristic, Todd. I certainly feel like I'm in the future. Ooh. Oh, and when it comes to dick picking, I guess the word intuitive was not part of the design document when they made it.
We are very flexible with changing things. We are actually at a state now in the development of the studio, we don't have a lot of extensive design documentation. We found that probably after we hit Fallout 3, the design docs that we had became outdated very quickly, because we knew we needed to get stuff in the game and play it and then change it. We needed to iterate on it. So we would have these extensive 50-page design documents that were completely outdated. and the time it took to maintain those just wasn't worth it.
And speaking of convoluted bullshit, the scanner. Sure, exploration and scanning gameplay is cool to have. In fact, Elite Dangerous and No Man's Sky cemented exploration as the third most important main gameplay for the space sims, as well as how to best do their mechanics. And I'm happy to see Starfield copying it, even if scanning is instantaneous and not press to hold, which would improve the immersion and make me feel like an actual space explorer, but I guess better than nothing. But you know what could be said less about? The loot.
And people hit this every time they play one of our new games, like picking up all the stuff. They immediately get encumbered. Like, no, you don't need the trays and the pencils. But we like that you can pick them up.
Oh, yeah, that would be really nice to know what is worth picking up and what is not. Now, if only there would be a way to fucking tell that with some, I don't know, easy color coding or something, rather than memorizing, Todd. That's why we pick up shit, Todd. God damn it, Todd. And you know, it also feels like an extra spit in your face when one of the skills actually does color some of the items in the world when you upgrade it. But it only goes for the resources and only when you have marked them as tracked. Oh, but hey, at least they didn't repeat Fallout 4's bullshit looting where every material had some sort of a value, and materials were needed for building and crafting. So now, fuck off and collect everything. Oh, but speaking of looting garbage,
they immediately get encumbered. Like, no, you don't need the trays and the pencils.
Oh yeah? Well then why didn't you put in some sort of penalty for being over-encumbered? No, seriously, there is no penalty. See, in Fallout or Skyrim, once you reach the limit, your max walking speed is reduced, you can't sprint, and of course you can't teleport with fast travel. Starfield only does one of these things.
But why? You already had it figured out, didn't ya? Or maybe that just simply made too much sense. So instead of penalties, let's just introduce some sort of health damage, which itself is toothless because it can't kill ya. And hey, let's introduce some sort of a dragon shout, which completely nullifies the penalties.
Are completely necessary in getting this fine vessel.
And why the fuck is it called O2 tank? Jesus fucking Christ.
But finally, in the FPS category, we pretty much have to talk about the AI. It's bad. Like, it's not horrible, but it's pretty bad, basically. At most, they might be passable, but even when Fallout 3's AI pressured the player more, you start to wonder whether or not there is even any skill involved in being a gunslinger in Starfield, as enemies are walking cinder blocks, meaning that they have far too much health, even compared to other Bethesda games, and that's basically the difficulty, which it really isn't. See, when game developer can't code for shit and making competent and challenging AI is a bit too hard. What the game designer resorts to are bullet sponge enemies. Now, they also help casual players and audiences not suck at the game, so I guess it's a win-win for lazy coders and general audiences who don't want to be challenged. And maybe I sound like, no, actually I do sound like an elitist, but that's the thing. Making challenging AI would also reward, well, less competent players by just simply toning down their aggressiveness or some other stat. If the AI is clever and interesting, it will still translate when you dumb it down or pare it down for easier difficulties, you realize that. So there is no excuse for making bad AI. Oh, well, unless of course you can't. And so the cavalcade of piss-poor mechanics culminated in another lazy tool in the lazy game designer's toolbox: level scaling enemies and weapons. I mean, hey, look, why plan out your open world how players seize each area and what gear they might have at the time, or the fastest they get there? Why even bother? Just let the algorithm adjust enemy damage and health according to one single variable, and that's your level. I mean, who cares, right? Elden Ring who? Dark Souls what? They aren't even RPGs like King Bethesda. They don't make good open worlds anyway, so who cares about those pathetic peasants? We are Bethesda. We have been making games for 20 plus years and we know what casual plebs like, right?
But hey, it's sloppy lazy design, but it still has gameplay. Sure, the stats become meaningless because of the level scaling, but it's still a game, right? And sure, fine, the guns are not shooting straight, but They don't need to, it's an RPG, whatever that fucking means. But regardless, for the casual audiences, it's fine. And sure, it is, if you have low standards.
Now, let's talk about the possibly best part about Starfield, the spacey ships. Now, obviously, being a Bethesda game, being made for casual audiences and mainstream, well, you don't want to be making a hardcore space sim, and that's absolutely fine. Starfield taking in some of the good aspects of the genre and promoting it to general audiences is only a good thing. However, like with the on-foot AI, the space AI, well, it's far too simple. It's so simple that all it does is aim at the middle of your ship. And let's say if you build a ship that has nothing inside the middle of it, well, then you basically have an invincible ship now, don't ya? Bethesda, 20-year experience in game making, right? You know, I also got asked, well, if you're making a basic, casual-friendly mechanics for flight and combat, why the fuck did you overcomplicate the power distribution, Bethesda? At the time when even the most hardcore space sims like, let's say, Elite Dangerous, Star Citizen, resort to only 3-way power distribution, you, Bethesda, think that overcomplicating this side mechanic somehow is a good idea? But putting that aside, Bethesda still can be praised for taking in aspects of the space sims from the new age, most notably being able to walk inside your own ship. Though it is overlooked as a feature, it's cool, an immersion-driving feature that today, having a space game without it feels like basically leaving free immersion on the table. What's even better is ability to dock with another ship, kill the crew, loot it, and even steal the ship itself. This sort of a feature was first pioneered, as far as I know, in a Russian game of '97 called Parkan, but stealing your opponent's ship was still not possible. But regardless, today it's not exactly a new thing, but it's a very rare feature and so cool. And to cap off the fun stuff, we got the ship building itself. Though it is clunky and with buggy mechanics, lackluster modules, still, this sort of feature has done before, of course. Yet, always, and I mean always, it is a fan favorite. And looking at the articles and videos produced at the time, shipbuilding guides or just builds themselves have been always the favorites. And why not?
Exactly. Minimal ship power, go slow. We grab the data on that satellite and jump away.
Oh, and it would be pretty nice to have ship stealth, or like for example what Story segment showed us. But it's fake. There is no ship stealth in Starfield. They faked it. Oh god. And of course there's also smuggling that comes along with it, but in Starfield all it is just a dice roll if you have shielded cargo. Who cares? But okay, generally, ships are mostly positive addition. It's cool that you can steal them, it's nice that they're easy to use, it's great that you can build them, but what can you do with them? In short, combat. That's it. I shit you not. Yes, technically, you can blow up asteroids like in No Man's Sky and call it mining, but it's neither efficient nor profitable. There is no exploration, since you can't really travel anywhere. Well, technically you can, with very low speeds, but otherwise you need to teleport with a crappy cutscene everywhere, because guess what? If you travel, manually, nothing is gonna load in you. Yep, that was discovered immediately on the first day when somebody tried to go from orbit into the planet straight away.
Exploration in Starfield isn't what people thought. As I get very, very, very close to the surface, like a few meters away, you start to see the headlights of the ship show up on the planet, so it's like a big white light. Ooh. It was flat. Pluto confirmed flat. Flat Earth! We just went right through it!
And thus your pride and joy, your ship, becomes nothing more than a teleporting house. Yep, that's right. Every time you want to go anywhere, you need to teleport somewhere with a loading screen. And every time you teleport, the game forces a one random encounter in your face from a small list of things. And trust me, you'll get pretty sick of them quickly. So all you do is teleport and dogfight. that's it. Oh, and since we already established that there are no weight limits or penalties in the game, same thing applies to spaceships. You don't become heavier and can't fly due to the weight. No matter the weight, your teleporting house will teleport regardless. Now, unlike space sims, there are no freeform trading, but instead, most you get is maybe random fetch quests, meaning deliverables at the mission board, and that's it. And piracy too is the most toothless system I've ever seen.
Taylor received. Something wrong? You better get help then, because we have the firepower to blow you. You just saved your own life.
So basically, you threaten a ship, either they surrender and you take the goods and get a bounty on your head, or you fail to intimidate them and nothing, literally nothing happens. You don't get a bounty for trying to intimidate into piracy. What bullshit is this? And finally, there aren't even any spaceship racing either. What a mischance. So, these are the spaceships, literally the definition of the word hollow. And you know, it kind of hurts this one most, because, well, there are so many nice features put into this whole big thing called spaceship, that even the big boy space sims don't have at times. But no, it's reduced to nothing more than a teleporting house with dogfighting minigame. Since we're talking about teleportation, what about the open world itself? The big thing that Bethesda succeeds in the most. Isn't that the linchpin why their games don't suck?
You may be wondering, just how big is this game? But over 100 systems, over 1,000 planets, all open for you to explore.
But I gotta ask, why so many? Like seriously, for Fallout 4 and 76, you barely struggle to fill the open worlds with something semi-interesting, so why?
I think if you look at your audience, they get used to a game, and they usually want to +1 it. They want to add X, Y, and Z, and the developers usually do, we do as well, right? We want to say, okay, we want to add this. So even Starfield, as we're looking at now, we're looking at feedback. We have a big list here of here's all the things that we want to add to the game, and everybody wants to do it right away.
Ah, well, I suppose it's fair enough, but like with Elite Dangerous, No Man's Sky, Star Citizen, and, oh, in fact, many other out there games, all of them are just doing it for doing sake, rather than that would make the open worlds more interesting. It's for bragging rights.
So, let's start with the obvious. There is no overworld. But first, what the fuck is overworld? Well, in loose terms, it's basically the main map which connects all the other maps, dungeons, rooms, and whatnot else. Think of Skyrim's open world itself. Everything that's not a dungeon or a city, that's pretty much the open overworld. For Starfield, well, okay, there actually is an overworld. It's your galaxy map. Yep, UI element is your overworld. Get fucked! But why is overworld important? Well, to put it simply, in games like Starfield, where you don't have one massive connected asset stream map with seamless gameplay, but bunch of smaller maps that require loading screens, well, for these types of games, having one massive map that connects all the smaller ones creates that illusion of more seamless gameplay and open world itself. And Starfield doesn't have that. This is made worse when you land on a planet. You pick a dot on a planet and use loading screens to teleport onto a proc-gen map. Cool, so even landing is teleportation. My immersion! You know, I sure feel like a space pilot, Todd. I feel the immersion, Todd. Well, at least you can run around on the planet and that must be fun, right? Yeah, well, unless you enjoy being locked in a literal invisible wall box. For fuck's sakes. Yep, that's right. Whenever you land on a planet, you're landed in a square map with edge you can reach in about 10 minutes by running in any direction.
Apparently people are also upset that you can't run around the circumference of entire planets without hitting like an invisible wall. And I have no idea why you would want to spend your time running around a planet doing nothing. Do you think it's fun in Minecraft to spend 820 hours running to the edge of the world? Well, it would take 10 times longer to do that on planet Earth. I get people testing this for curiosity, but to complain about it, like, you're upset the game doesn't allow you to waste more of your time.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe just picking any direction and going is kind of similar to the exploration sense you get in Skyrim or Fallout games. Oh, but no, wait. I think he meant basically, what's the point in running in a direction just for the running's sake? Well, that's kind of reductive, but still, it's funny because the next thing he says...
I feel like this is what blind allegiance and console fanboyism does to the mind. Like, facts, logic, and reasoning become something of a conspiracy against you, and everything else is wrong and everyone else is stupid but you.
See, excusing bad developer decisions, like restricting player space, with just saying, well, there's nothing outside of your immediate landing circle, so why would you want to go beyond that, is fucking stupid. See, I respect Actman, but boy oh boy, does he not engage his act brain sometimes and spout some stupid shit. Now why would you want to run around seamlessly on a planet without restrictions in a game all about exploration and traveling? Wow, that beats me. It's a fucking mystery, Actman.
So, let me explain in a greater detail. Saying, why would you want to do that, is simply making excuses and accepting developers' shoddy work as well as advocating for just simply a worse game. Plain and simple.
I feel like this is what blind allegiance and console fanboyism does to the mind.
Since we already have a great example of what happens when you're given this unlimited map and traversal, we can directly compare how features, stack up. No Man's Sky's open world offers unlimited traversal without loading screens, and so does Star Citizen as well as Elite Dangerous. All of these games, because they're not stopping you every 10 minutes as you're walking around, they even subconsciously create that genuine feeling of immersive freedom. Pair that with sparsely populated points of interest or random encounters, hell, even some kind of interesting mountain range. And it can truly craft this unencumbered sense of vast open space with truly seamless gameplay. And yes, just running around on a planet can be cathartic, fun, relaxing, and even exhilarating if you stumble upon something interesting, hell, even in a proc-gen glitch. Conversely, by Actman's own excuse-making logic, we can apply the same thing for Starfield's maps. Why the fuck would you want them so big and so large? Why would you want those large maps? You can put everything in 100th of the size and it would be fine, right? Why would you want that? Do you see how retarded that argument of why would you actually want that is? And yes, I mean it. Why would you want that is mentally deficient excuse that accepts the slop the developer has given as gospel. So maybe he's saying that, well, what's the point if there is no interest points or anything worthwhile once you go too far from the landing spot?
I get people testing this for curiosity, but to complain about it, like, you're upset the game doesn't allow you to waste more of your time.
Okay. Well, isn't it developer's task to make you care about the game, its story, and other parts, and that includes these points of interest and things to do, and not just placing a couple of little things around your spawn point and that's it? So yeah, again, it's just accepting developers' laziness. And you know, it's like watching children take the word of grown-ups, meaning developers, as truth and not just sloppy, lazy excuse. And you know, that's kinda cute, isn't it? But seriously though, yeah, Starfield is so goddamn lazy that basically all points of interest are generated no further than halfway between the landing spot and the invisible walls. Obviously, not to encourage you to go too far, so, you know, since there's nothing there. Oh, and let's not forget this.
But so many people asked it, why are there no vehicles on planets?
It's a great question, actually. It's something we consider. You know, we're going to do outer space, we're going to do planets. Once you do vehicles, it does change the gameplay. So by focusing, once you land in your ship, that you're on foot, it lets us really, for the players, make it an experience where we know how fast they're seeing things.
Oh shit, how did this Skyrim footage got in this review? Oh no! But seriously, we all know why. We know why there are no buggies. Why can't you fly with your ship on the planets? Well, obviously to not bump into those invisible walls. And those exist because, well, guess what? They couldn't make fully proc-gen planets like their competitors. But returning back to Bethesda a little bit and their bad decisions, I seriously have not played a game where I have to use my fusion-powered spaceship to fly into the orbit just to land a few meters to the right on the surface. It's amazing. Jesus, this game is in such a stark contrast that comparing it to No Man's Sky genuinely feels like punching down. And yes, I mean No Man's Sky when it launched in 2016. Even that version had more evocative spaceflight and exploration. Speaking of boredom, instead of real random encounters, no, just like in space, every time you teleport somewhere with your house, instead of encountering things organically like walking on the road on Skyrim, Starfield just shoves all the points of interest in your face as soon as you land. Sure, you might need to go closer to them here and there, but that's not really discovering now, is it? So yeah, there are no random encounters in the game, just forced points of interest and events every time you use the ship. Alright, well, let's take a closer look at the level design. Now, while I commented on how poor the city designs are, well, you could still give the whole thing a pass as long as action-based maps, facilities, and other points of interest worked. Sadly, in typical Bethesda fashion, the general dungeon layouts and gameplay only is meant for one type of approach: guns blazing in a narrow, linear corridor. Or maybe an arena. Ooh, that's an innovation. Sure, there is stealth, but Bethesda are notoriously bad in my book at making dungeons, as they don't accommodate stealth at all. And the gameplay basically results stealth until you can't one-hit kill and they spot you, then erupts a brawl. Hell, even in Ryujin or Pirate quest lines, the level design where the quests are telling you to go are notably improved compared to everything else in normal gameplay, just to accommodate well, whatever stealth there could be, and it's very telling. And speaking of stealth, it's really bad, like really bad. Inconsistent detection, weird responses, previously mentioned lack of level design to support it, lack of damage, and non-existent luring, and more. Sure, Stealth Archer from Skyrim is a meme by now, and it has its own faults, but for all of it, it was still fun, if broken. And honestly, I don't know what happened internally, because Fallout always had horrible stealth in comparison to Skyrim, be it Fallout 3 before or Fallout 4 after. Both had major downgrades. Weird that. But anyways, if you want to know how bad, unpredictable, and inconsistent stealth or level design is, then you just need to play through the Ryujin questline and try to stealth everything. There is a segment specifically inside the Ryujin headquarters where you're supposed to stealth around, and for this mission, Bethesda seemingly attempted to script some stealth sequences. However, the AI-based stealth code or detection code is so bad that they seemingly had to dumb it down even further so that the mission could even work. It's the funniest shit I've seen. This is stealth. Apparently, me sprinting across. No, he didn't notice. No, it's all good. It's all right. Again.
So Ryujin owns drone.
Oh my god. But god damn. See, he didn't notice that I literally flew. Oh, and he's stuck in animations while I'm doing this. Fuck you, Bethesda. How hard is it to actually code in a decent stealth? Apparently, that's just too much work.
Now, of course, I'm not asking Starfield to be an immersive sim, accounting for countless possibilities and interactions with the player and the environment. However, a good design is good design, and not applying it is, well, simply speaking, lazy, being restricted, or uncreative. And boy oh boy, isn't Bethesda showcasing one of those, if not all three, today. See, Bethesda's design in stealth, combat, level design, and world design, even that, all of it is failing. And hell, they're trying to recycle 2 decades old game design, and guess what? It's not working. Well, not anymore. And that's kind of the thing. It was bad when it was new. Now, it's only pitiful.
And you know, the most telling part of how regressive their level and game designs are is simply put in the Dragon Shout magic shrines. Every goddamn shrine is the fucking same. No, seriously, every single shrine is the same thing. And no, I'm not just saying that because you're always doing the same zero-G farting minigame that some talentless idiot designer cooked up. Outside, they look the same. There's nothing special in any of them.
I think what's cool about this whole system that we generate the planet itself as a procedural content, but the handcrafted content itself comes as the player explore. It allows us to add that touch of environmental storytelling that Bethesda is known for.
I mean, seriously, how lazy could you get? Because guess what? In Skyrim, the Words of Power shrines each has some sort of a mini story to tell, at least in the environment and props placed around them. Like, for example, in one of them, Dragon had battled with guardsmen, and another one might have been hidden in a plain sight. So yeah, every single one of them has this revolutionary idea applied to them, called environmental storytelling. Imagine that. But in Starfield, fuck you! If Bethesda can't be arsed to put in extra effort to make their Space Dragonborn Shout altars special, what do you think the rest of the game has to offer? Oh, and what coincidence, we have come to the most important Bethesda RPG part. The fucking RPG itself!
Why is Quas gone? Why is always Quas gone?
Alright, well, let's begin from the start. What the fuck even is an RPG? Is this RPG? Or perhaps is this RPG? Or perhaps this is RPG? Or maybe this is RPG? Well, the answer is yes. All of it is, and then again, none of it is. See, dipshits on the internet have been defending Starfield and its bad choices and lack of, many things by constantly saying, well, this is not supposed to be insert a thing, but it's an RPG. I mean, seriously, after the first gameplay trailer released, I heard so many cunts say, but Starfield is not going to be sim like No Man's Sky or Elite Dangerous, it's an RPG. And then during the launch I even heard something like this. Well, the gunplay and combat is not good, but it's okay, cause you know, it's RPG. See, do you see the pattern here? Both fans and developers use this nebulous RPG as an excuse for bad design and bad mechanics, constantly. It's like the proverbial condom of Fallout games, and the reason why I utterly hate those games as games. There is no good excuse for you to be so lazy to create shitty mechanics, oh I don't know, like FPS shooting and movement mechanics, just because you're pretending to be something else. You know, it's like pretending that your car made by Kia is a Mercedes. Now, we can understand that focus in development is not being placed on these mechanics. Yes, but Bethesda, in my view, is utterly notorious for almost deliberately creating one of the worst FPS mechanics at the time, when FPS gameplay, its design, feel, and mechanics have already been established by the fucking industry, so making a bad FPS game is almost a deliberate ignorance of the industry, which Bethesda has propagated through the 20 years.
But it's still a Bethesda RPG through and through, where you step into a new world and you get that feeling of unlimited possibilities. Because the choice of where to go, it's not ours, it's yours.
Okay, here, yes, Starfield does not restrict you. Well, that is after you get to the constellation and get rid of the Protocol Indigo from Vasco, which in of itself is about 2 hours into the game for the first time you're playing it. Now that I think of it, maybe that's Bethesda's way to nullify the Steam refund policy, huh?
Gotcha, bitch!
However, this be who you want, well, it really is a lie. It's been a lie since the day Todd reared its head out of the septic tank they call Bethesda to promote his games. Okay, well, a lie might not be exactly correct. I mean, it's just like the RPG thing. It depends on how naive or narrow your field of view is, you know? It depends on your perspective, what being free means to you in a video game, right? So, be who you want to be. Sure. Well, from a very set and boring backgrounds that only affect very few speech checks, and even then only in a very simplistic way, with basically one exception, Bounty Hunter, which allows you to capture Vigilance megaship for the pirates in the finale of the quest line, forcing the captain to cancel self-destruct. All the other backgrounds, well, they're really basically a pretend flavor text. As for doing things you want and becoming who you want, well, no. You always shoot and kill people. Now, of course, with EM weapons you can pretend that you're not killing them, but all you do is shoot them and they fall down. What's the difference between them being killed or not? Nothing. And those skills like manipulation, intimidation, and whatnot else, those are just the lamest fucking things. But regardless, moving on. Most importantly, there is no freeform gameplay like in all other space sims, meaning trading, mining, bounty hunting, and deliveries. Although, then again, last two have missions in mission boards randomly being spawned in. But that's the thing. You, the player, need to prompt the game to have these activities spawned in for you, rather than simply going somewhere and organically finding them, without missions or contracts. Now, of course, you can pretend to be a microbe investigator by staring on random textures on the planet and letting your imagination run wild like a 3-year-old, with mishmash selection of toys reenacting the storming of Normandy beaches. But that's on you. But hey, let's delve deeper into the role-playing, shall we? Let's start with you. Your character you make. Now, for Starfield, it seems that Bethesda went back to Morrowind and Oblivion titles with the backgrounds and some of the traits. Well, at least on the surface. I think the idea was to bring some unique approach to character interactions where your background and skill set play a part in certain checks and results. But what it ended up being was, like I mentioned before, vapid and hollow results. Now, backgrounds do have some speech checks here and there. However, it is notable that some of the backgrounds are far better than others. Take, for example, Chef, the notoriously boring and the most useless one of all. Despite the fact that that was my first character, I still can't remember where the hell did I use the Chef background as my speech check. On the other hand, Cyberneticist or Bounty Hunter you do see quite often, or at least in comparison. Same thing goes with traits. While they pretend that some of them have positives and negatives offering unique and again interesting results, it basically is either lousy speech check or that doesn't matter 90% of the time, or the 10% when it does, it's a non-unique free pass. For example, Spaced versus Terra Firma. Same shit, different coating. However, like I mentioned before, there seldom are any zero-G environments, let alone ones with combat, so why even bother taking Spaced? While something like Wanted basically offers one type of a speech check, which again is a boring pass, with 2 extra random encounters happening in the world, which trust me, will get constantly on your nerves. Thank fuck at least you can remove it. Bottom line, Bethesda attempted to mimic the traits of Fallout 1, 2 and New Vegas, which made them so much fun to screw around in. But instead, sitting down and properly planning out these things, nah, let's just go to a lunch and forget about it. So what traits and backgrounds end up being is utterly missed opportunity and waste of time. And you know, it's funny that I say that.
The way the environmental damage works in the game on planets and on your suit, and you have resistances to certain types of atmosphere effects, whether that's radiation or thermal, etc. And that was it's a pretty complex system actually. It was very punitive. And so we kept trying, where you get these afflictions, we kept trying to tune it. We get a point where we're tuning it and you're having to heal those things. And what we did at the end of the day, and it was a complicated system for players to understand, is we just nerfed the hell out of it. Where it ends up being, it matters, but only a little bit. It matters more in flavor. Like the affliction you get is more annoying knowing you have it than the game result. Usually, I'm generalizing.
And yes, afflictions in Starfield are so far nerfed that I wonder why did they even bother implementing it, when even in Fallout games it was mostly meaningless. Well, I guess it's a sunk cost for them, but still. Similarly, backgrounds and traits are also made worthless, with the exception of maybe some unique ones like Adoring Fan and Parents, which mostly serve flavor text purpose and not much more.
So then, this illusion of choice, we'll see it in a few other places. However, it's interesting that the game offers you a choice and choices here and there. Be who you want and do what you want. But what it does not offer are consequences for those choices, and thus, those choices become meaningless. And come to think of it, the game basically becomes this ultimate nihilist dream, where nothing matters.
Now we have to talk about the skills. Oh, the skills. The bread and butter of the leveling systems that make or break these experiences. And in the case of Starfield, utterly breaks it. But not in the fun, stealth archer go brr.
And it's intentionally made to be played for a long time. It's one of the things we've learned from our previous games, from the Skyrim, from Fallout, that people want to play them for a very long time. So Starfield, I would say, was the most intentional going into it. This is a game people are going to play for a long time. How do we build it such that it is allowing that in a way that feels natural?
So yeah, 40 hours in, my first character had barely level 35 by playing the intended way. See, there are over 70 skills, each skill has 4 ranks, and each rank costs 1 skill point. And every time you level up, you only get 1 skill point. By the end of my first playthrough, well, before I started exploiting the fuck out of the game, I was around level 55 and it felt like a massive slog to just level up. And you know, funny that I say that, cause level up XP curve only gets worse and worse. I frankly dread to think how many hours you normally need to spend just to level up to 100 for, you know, the achievement. Not to mention max out every skill for the level 250 or so. Fuck me. Now, if it wasn't clear already, Todd and the genius game designer team who have been designing games for decades now, with their genius level intellect, wisdom and experience, came to a conclusion that the game would be better if it was built to be played for a long time. You know, like those idiots on Reddit or forums who equate gameplay hours to value. Okay, so I bought this $70 game. It's kinda bad, but as long as I waste hundreds of hours on it, it suddenly becomes a good value, right? To me, this once more spells out a complete and utter disconnect from developers. Either they're so far up their asses that no other game exists other than their own, or they refuse to play any other games because, you know, learning from the industry you're in is simply beneath you, and all you need is your fanboy praise. Games like Elite Dangerous, Warframe, RuneScape, and every other freemium mobile game out there pretty much chooses to sacrifice the character and gain progression for grind, ultimately to sell you microtransactions while baiting you with barely enough fun gameplay. Seriously, go watch the South Park episode on this, it perfectly explains the trick. The episode's name is Freemium Isn't Free. But hold on. Why would a single-player game with no microtransactions choose to sacrifice gameplay enjoyment just to bring in grind and extend the player retention as much as possible? Well, there is one theory.
Okay, so people like our games, right? And, well, hey, they will fix them for free with mods, right? So, all that we have to do is make them last longer, so that we can sell them for longer, right?
I mean, come to think of it, who wouldn't want to play Skyrim for just longer if the gameplay, quests, and quality would persist? Sadly, however, what Bethesda did was, like I mentioned with the Dragonshout Altars, was pumping out as much content as possible or slacked off, just so you could play for a long time. See, there is a reason why every time you see a developer substitute the quality of the content with quantity, only the stupid and naive stick around afterwards. So, in regards to variety and quality of the quests, enemies, gameplay, and events, Starfield maybe started out like Skyrim, but quickly got watered down harder than martinis in upstate nightclubs. This is the same reason why enemies take so many bullets to the crotch to be killed. Plus, of course, thanks to the level scaling, it only gets worse the further you progress. This is also why the levels only give 1 skill point, or why each skill is segmented into 4 parts. And also, this is why the New Game Plus exists in the first place. See, while the idea is not a bad one, in Skyrim, sure, why not? That would be actually a pretty good feature, if only it would further trivialize the whole game, but regardless. But back to Starfield. See, by the first playthrough, you might be around level 70. I personally was level 45 when I reached the end of main story myself. Then, considering that leveling up will get slower and slower, well, getting to the reset number 10 does not sound quite out of place. So basically Bethesda designed about 80-hour game, and to force you to keep playing, they sprinkle in a few little details and of course carry over the progression of your character's level. And sure, enemies are giving more XP, so you definitely are getting stronger, you get more skills, so you get more unlocks and so on and so forth. But then you remember, the game has level scaling. So that basically means that the game moves goalposts ahead of you, and you are trying harder and harder to catch up, rather than progressing. And this is why I hate level scaling. It's not real progression. New Game Plus is a fucking scam. The only real choice that the New Game Plus offers you is replaying the same missions and maybe taking different choices. Which doesn't matter, but we'll get to that. And here's something funny sad, though it is more sad than funny. The dragon shouts themselves. You see, a friend of mine once asked, why do we even need these powers? And, come to think of it, he's kinda right. Why do we need space magic? Maybe Starfield's universe would become more interesting if there was no magical component, and only nuts and bolts space stuff. But then you remember the Bethesda lead writer saying this.
It came this close to getting cut. I mean, it was like one conversation away from never being in the game. Salem, when I think Salem, I think witches. I actually lived in Salem for a while. We thought, well, maybe we'll actually have characters that can act like witches, but they're using radiation to sort of like, use powers that look like witchcraft, kind of like the X-Men or something, right? And we'll do that. We'll leverage Skyrim's magic system, right? Because we still have it in the code, and we had it in the code. It got ripped out at some point, okay? So we didn't have that anymore. And so we weren't going to recreate that entirely just for one quest. It wasn't going to happen.
But anyways, the reason why we stop at New Game Plus 10 is where basically your dragon shots are fully upgraded. Now, in theory, that might sound interesting, but remember, level scaling enemies, meaning that the game constantly is moving goalposts, so instead of beating the game, you're just catching up to it. And oh boy, dragon shots are the worst thing! See, some of the dragon shots actually have some utility, other ones are complete waste of time. Well, at least when you first get them. Some dragon shots get somewhat good with upgrades, with New Game Pluses, other ones barely change. See, when examining dragon shots, I was astonished how unbalanced and poorly designed all of them were. Take for example the Whirlwind Shout. The first time you get it, it's so underpowered, it's completely useless. You never use it for anything. But at the same time, by the New Game Plus 10 or hell even 5, it has a bit of a utility, I guess. And yet it's still too clunky and outclassed by your guns at that point already. So what is the point? See, what I think happened was that Bethesda made these dragon shouts, then worked backwards. Never really testing the extremes, meaning the low end of it. Just made sure that the results on paper looked somewhat okay and balanced, and done deal for the max level.
And so, thanks to these dragon shouts, their lack of playtesting, balance and more, for the second time I realized Bethesda doesn't know what the fuck they're doing. The padded gameplay, the grindy enemies, the level scaling, all of it hints at a couple of things, but most of all you can see the results in Steam achievements. Compare it with Skyrim and Fallout and you'll see that Starfield weirdly stands out in being last. I wonder why. Now, of course, they've made this grand, big, fucking open world, and that's, I guess, commendable. But when it's made more grindy, well then, whoop-de-fucking-do.
Oh boy, here I go grinding again.
Oh, and now we have to talk about the skills themselves. Oh, fuck me. Okay, here we go. First off, Persuasion. Actually pretty neat minigame that kinda lacks the consistency and, shall we call them, planned out responses for some instances, making them feel a bit more robotic than they are. Especially when you can collect XP, I guess, for the auto success, making the whole conversation just click and the person just immediately agrees with me without me saying anything, which is just, why? Of course, then there are the basic boring bonuses. About 90% of the combat tree is filled with those, and as I said previously, it's just lazy because RPGs are lazy. But it would be fine if the game wasn't grindy. See, the skill tree is that carrot at the end of the stick for which you'll be sitting there like a little special needs kid and keep on grinding. And now that's when it becomes a little too manipulative. But by all means, that wasn't the only problem. Very quickly I realized that something was wrong with the whole game structure, thanks to these skills. Now, to put it simply, Persuasion minigame is unlocked by default. You can use it wherever, you don't need the skill. However, to use the fucking jetpacks, or to pickpocket or target enemy subsystems on ship, or bribe someone, all of those do require a skill point being wasted. Now, if I wouldn't know any better, I would say that this is a pointless skill point wasting and padding for more grinding, when in Skyrim and Fallout these things came as default. And you know, I don't know any better. Oh, and those special social skills like intimidation, manipulation and whatever, the word clunky and complete waste of time does ring a bell. However, the most insulting part, some of the skills are fucking broken, misrepresentative, and downright unbalanced that I genuinely will call Todd Howard a fucking liar if he claims that the game was playtested. For example, remember that laser cutter killing the space Deathclaw in mere seconds? Wow, just melts! Oh my god! See, this is thanks to the burning effect in the laser skill. See, burning damage, unlike all the other types of damage, is the health total percentile, not a flat number. And of course, the cutter itself is weirdly coded that it procs burning effect at a massive rapid rate. So tell me, would you call this unbalanced as fuck? Cause I sure would. As for misrepresentative skills, well, they are numerous, but for example, many skills come with such little information that you need a soothsayer to decipher what the fuck the code corresponding to each skill even does. But it only gets worse when you realize that there are broken skills too.
Ranks 1 to 3 supposedly increase accuracy while hip firing, but take a look at these spray patterns and tell me if you can see any discernible difference. I feel like at the absolute most, there's a very subtle tightening of the spray pattern. The first 3 ranks are also supposed to increase your range while hip firing, and they do for ranks 1 and 2, and then at rank 3, it reverts back to 0 bonus for some stupid, inexplicable reason. I'll give it a B, but man, they really need to playtest these skills better and work on making descriptions that aren't incredibly obscure like increased, notably increased, and greatly increased accuracy.
And you know, I also noticed different attack patterns for fists when on first or the third person. But, you know, who cares? Melee weapons are worthless and useless completely in Starfield, so again, who cares? But seriously, I did a whole challenge attempting to beat the game with the fists and punch the first guy. Oh yes, my punches now put everyone to sleep, quick. One could say, my fists are made of roofies. Once every bad guy is on the floor drooling and drowning in their vomit, guess which skill reared its head? Sneaky Breaky. Finally I was making bad amounts of damage. An upgrade, that is right. Finally Fisting Queen was able to do some kind of damage. To kill someone. Yes, you could do it. No, please, for the love of God, don't do it. Now, granted, Bethesda is not in the business of making a hardcore shooter with one-bullet headshots, but that's kinda the thing. They fall back on excuses and lazy design because they can't, for the life of them, code a competent AI. So, enemies must become tanky, aiming must become vague, and balancing must be done by a fucking algorithm, not somebody with a goddamn brain. The more I looked into the weapon balance paired with the game structure, ammo availability, even design principles upon which they are supposed to work and what role they should take up in the game while you're normally playing it, the more I returned to the question of, did anyone playtest this shit?
Now, we need to acknowledge another fact. RPGs are lazy. No, not because getting, suddenly superpowered bullets in your gun by, whatever percentage, but because it's simpler and easier to make. It's hard and requires thought process to create specific mechanics, like bullet collisions with specific body parts or whatnot else. And that takes, thinking process, time, and of course resources, not to mention actually ability to do so. So instead, for RPGs, you'll always see the blanket 30% extra damage to guns, because it's a lot easier to just simply increase the damage, and it doesn't really matter where the player hits or how they hit or what weapons they use or what combat they use. It's just a blanket statement and it's easier to do. And thus, it is objectively lazier. It is a shorthand and, well, not necessarily it's always a bad thing in production, but ultimately for the game's gameplay style, well, sadly, it is objectively worse. And that's why oftentimes you hear me say that Stalker is so much more better than Fallout has ever been. Well, also because it's just more interesting and whatever. But the point is, RPGs are simply lazier type of design. And boy oh boy, isn't Bethesda the king shit of lazy.
So, skills truly were the third hint for me that pointed that Bethesda just simply don't know what the fuck they're doing. Every time I'm even tempted to compare Starfield's weapon unbalance and skill undesign to any even semi-competent game, I'm simply getting more angrier. So, let's not. Moving on. Oh, for fuck's sakes. Okay, so building. Well, coming into this, I already have bias against it. I hate it in Space Engineers, I hate it in No Man's Sky, I tolerate it in Minecraft, I despise it in Fallout 4, and here in Starfield, well, I hate it too. So, I guess that's an improvement against Fallout 4, I guess. So, mechanics-wise, yes, it's a bit more usable than Fallout 4, and yet it's still inconsistent and clunky.
It seems like, and people hit this every time they play one of our new games, like picking up all the stuff. They immediately get encumbered. Like, no, you don't need the trays and the pencils.
Now, obviously, unlike Fallout 4, where every item had material value, so you better collect everything for your weapon upgrades and more, now in Starfield, the resources for buildings have been clearly separated.
Oh, God damn it! This shit's so goddamn boring, and I need just so much of it!
And so my bias against the base building almost uniformly comes from this problem. Every game that has it makes it a chore to gather everything to build out something at least semi-interesting or useful. Same goes with Starfield. In fact, it's so bad that it's easier and faster to buy materials off of vendors, not gather them yourself. And then, you might as well, because guess what? Some of the materials you can't even craft. Like, for example, adhesive, which is required for weapon upgrades. Yay! Not to mention that it also breaks the immersion or whatever is left of it. Basically, in a space game, you can't be self-sufficient. Fuck you. Oh, but we're not done. Remember me talking about mechanics being clunky and unreliable? Well, just try to build a pile of storage boxes. You'll know what I mean. First of all, the snapping mechanism is unreliable and doesn't work right. Then, of course, you need to connect every piece like a fucking idiot, and you better do it in a series, otherwise it won't work correctly, or at least so does the tutorial tell me. Then, after about 20th box you placed, which barely is enough for about 5 extractors for 24-hour cycle, the base itself is so unoptimized that you can say bye-bye to your game's performance. All the while, the GPU is screaming for a reprieve.
And you can build your own outposts. These act as a home away from home for survival and resource generation.
Ah, how cute. Well, sadly, that the base building is lacking some basic features that would make it a home away from home. For example, mass storage, where you can toss in everything and sort it automatically. And what about defenses? What the hell are they even for? I mean, I made shit tons of bases in this game and barely have any NPCs coming to raid me. And that only happens only once. For the first night when I build a thing. And even that only has happened twice. So again, in my experience, I never get raided. So what the fuck is the point? And the final nail in the proverbial coffin of the base building is the interconnects. You know, those landing pads that serve to transfer materials between bases. Now, if you want to see how unfavorable base building in Starfield is, just look at the achievements and see how many people have connected 5 bases. That's not a lot, now is it? And you'll see how handy the system of cobbled together bullshit really is. And you know, at this point I might as well mention the crafting and research. Essentially, it is a downgraded version from Fallout 4, where basically making a new upgrade for a weapon deletes the previous one, without ability to put it on something else. Yay! Fucking Christ. And there are certainly few more problems with the progression of it, but regardless, moving on. Oh, and speaking of, the least achieved achievement is collecting 500 plants. Well, guess what? Their only use is in food and medicines, so no wonder when no one bothers picking up flowers when afflictions themselves are nerfed to the ground and chems are worthless.
Oh yeah, bravo Bethesda. You've been working for 20 years on games, haven't you? Oh yeah, bravo. Jesus fucking Christ.
Now then, remember I mentioned the illusion of choice. Well, a similar thing for the gameplay I like to call world reactive. Basically, it's the game world's ability to react to you doing things. Most simple things you can think of is this.
Gabe had started to develop this theory around interactivity, and the environment needed to let you do what you wanted and then react to it. So if you did something, if you shot your gun, there needed to be a bullet hole in the wall. If you did a thing, people needed, other characters needed to react. The world is acknowledging you exist. The world is acknowledging all of your actions. And that's this huge part of reinforcement.
The degrees to which the game recognizes and responded to the player's choices and actions, right? In behavioral science, you would say we're explicitly talking about what were reinforcers and what the reinforcement schedules were, right? At that point in time, that was a useful way of making design decisions. The point I would make is, if I go up to a wall and shoot it, to me, it feels like the wall is ignoring me. I'm getting a narcissistic injury when the world is ignoring me. So to me, I was trying to convey to the user a sense of, yes, you were making choices, yes, you were progressing, which meant the game had to acknowledge that back to you. If you shoot at a wall, there have to be decals. If you kill a bunch of Marines, the Marines have to run away from you, right? You have to have this sense of the game acknowledging and responding to the choices and actions and progressions that you've made. Otherwise, it loses any sort of impact.
Games in early 2000s and even 90s had these very simple things, but they made the world a bit more reactive to you doing things. Oh, god fucking damn it, Bethesda. Even the NPC shopkeepers no longer have schedules like Skyrim had, and that sort of tone carries over for the whole game. When even the small stuff, the simplest things in the world, they could not be bothered to add. What do you think they did with big stuff? The stuff that mattered. See, with this kind of level of incompetence, laziness, or zero fucks given, I'm genuinely surprised and astounded that guns leave bullet holes at this point.
And that's the thing, the world needs to react. Now, I don't remember exactly where I heard this one, so forget the quoting ability, but point is, 90% of an acting apparently is ability to react. It's not the person hitting the dude, but the stuntman reacting and their ability to sell the damage. And so is the same thing with games' world.
Just think back on the games that had most impactful guns and weapons you've ever played. Think about what makes it fun. Is it the JPEG in the corner of your screen that looks nice? Or is it the way the creature explodes in a puff of red blobby particles? And the same thing applies to every prop, every item, every action. However, when the game ignores you, well, you get Starfield.
Why is this happening?
And it goes deeper than that. When I talk about world reactive, it also pertains to killing children. Yes, that's right, fuckers. It's time to talk about the American pastime of the decade. Killing children in schools. Yes, indeed. Fact is, Starfield doesn't allow you to kill any children, even in the only school in the whole game.
And that there will be...
And this, more than anything, tips the hand of the game designers and especially the writers as to what is possible in their world. And even setting aside from killing children, none of the named NPCs you can kill, and that is a big problem.
Someone help me! Help! I'm being attacked!
See, when you're not allowed to remove an NPC by killing them, the game is basically telling you two things about the game designer. First, they wanted the game to be played a certain way, and second, they didn't account for any deviations in the story, or didn't even bother coming up with a different outcome. For these open-type worlds, it's usually done through their sheer time constraints, but these days it's mostly done because of laziness. I mean, come on, it's faster and simpler to just have an NPC take a knee and get back after about 10 seconds or so, then plan another way, route, gameplay, where either by accident or on purpose the player would kill an NPC. A great example is the pirate questline. For example, you have a traitor among your midst. Now, wouldn't it be funny and interesting, especially with New Game Plus, to get rid of that traitor right away by killing them, and then explaining why you did so? Oh, he's just taking a knee. Okay then. And this happens everywhere. In fact, it's so brazen and in your face that looking back, to me, the game feels like an attack chopper parent who won't let the little baby child do anything until it's permitted. Hell, this is perfectly exemplified in the second act of the main story. Now, Vladimir asks you to go to I to help fix some things in it and install whatever. When you get up there, you go to mission objective, that's like a panel right there, and you press an interact button. What do you think happens next? Help me weld out these panels. Okay, press E to do that. Okay, I'll pick up the welder and... Nope! You welded the panel shut, but something behind it begins smoking. You did it! Do you feel accomplished? How? Fucking, not only how did they think that that would be a smart idea, but how could they not think of, let's say, taking something like this and just do simple this? Yeah, this pisses me off. A fucking text prompt comes up telling you that you did a silly job welding this panel, when in the game you have already a fucking welding gun. A fucking text prompt! Are you kidding me? How hard would have it been for Bethesda to do the bare basic interaction and using the fucking welding gun and telling you to shoot the welding spots here and there to simulate you welding? You know, the stuff that 90s games introduced. This, more than anything in the whole game, tells me how utterly lazy every single Bethesda developer is, and I'm being serious now. Best of all, they already made this simple feature in this very game. This is the epitome of tell, don't show. And trust me, we'll get more of this in the story segment. All of this shows the lack of planning, smarts, dedication of making a game where
it's an epic role-playing game where you get to be who you want and go where you want.
But instead we have the most on-the-rails baby's first adventure. And you know, it utterly disgusts me that not only New Vegas accounted for NPCs getting killed, but even fucking Skyrim allowed at least some named characters to be killed outright.
And this, more than anything else, reveals how unimaginative Bethesda is, how regressive their game design is and continues to be. And you know, at this point I'm kinda expecting Bethesda's Elder Scrolls 6 to basically be like this.
No, you can't kill the bad pirate guy now. No.
And now we come to the crux of what made the Starfield so very, very bad for a lot of people. And that's the teleportation / loading screens. In fact, this clip comparing Cyberpunk is wonderfully, surprisingly not too exaggerated either. Seriously, it's constant, it's everywhere. No matter what you do or where you go, you're gonna see far too many loading screens, and even compared to the old game standards. That's how bad it is.
Everything is a goddamn loading screen. From going to a different star system, from going to planet, landing on a planet, entering a dungeon, to even more questionable choices like entering or exiting your own ship, or using the intercity railway, to even unforgivable and inexcusable cases like literal single-room shops and using a fucking elevator in the same fucking map is a goddamn loading screen teleport. Now, I already mentioned this before, but it's utterly astounding to think that the professional and highly paid coders and software engineers over at Bethesda Studio could not code a working elevator. Oh, wait, no, hold on. They did. So why are elevators teleportation devices?
No, seriously, I want to know. I want to know how, what, and where, and why. But nothing from you, fanboys. Fuck off. Still, it profusely confounds me to think where the hell is Todd Howard's head residing in these days to allow something as this.
And then to find the experience. You know, so for us it was, this is what the game feels like to be the space explorer. Okay. Feels like to be the space explorer.
Mr. Todd, do you know what I'm feeling? You know what feeling I'm feeling right now? I'm feeling so filled that my spaceman adventures where I should be feeling like a spaceman is completely filled out so far that I'm feeling the best feeling of all time. And that's boredom by loading screen.
The reason this is so crucial and why it utterly destroys the game is simple: seamless gameplay. See, for decades now, PR heads, publishers, developers, and whatnot else are always pushing the whole, wow, our game is very seamless, all the seamless stuff, all the seamless transitions, and ooh. But me being a PC Master Race member for life, I always get to enjoy these seamless top quality games, and it basically came as standard for me. But even then, the console peasantry can be always thanked, at least in part, for pushing this sort of a technology further. Oh, at least in a certain way, where the gameplay is less interrupted by loading screens. Or cleverly, loading screens are basically part of the game, but you're just, let's say, sitting in an elevator. But it's still a game now, isn't it? Now, Dead Space, most of all, is a phenomenal example in several ways, but most prudent to today's topic is the elevator ride and maybe holding times in airlocks or something like that, where the game is unloading the last level and loading in the new stuff ahead of the player without ever showing a loading screen. Now, the reason this is important is simple. If you're showing a loading screen, even if it is really quick, it still disrupts the feeling. The immersion into the moment you're engrossed in. Rather than being a game where from moment to moment you go having uninterrupted gameplay, in Starfield you are simply loading, and you know that you're loading from a small box into another small box. And that's far worse than even games from 90s. And that is how bad Starfield is. And if we go back to Skyrim or Fallout, remember, they have overworld, so they at least have some sort of a hub, big map where you can run around and do whatever. But in Starfield, well, your overworld is a fucking UI element.
Alrighty then. Now then, today on Sesame Street we shall be learning a new word, blah blah blah, and that is disjointed, indeed. That's how your game, Todd, is feeling.
It's like they took 200 square yards of medieval English countryside, added a few wolves, then copy-pasted it until it was roughly the size of Yorkshire. Fortunately, you can bypass the insipid landscape and instantly teleport to anywhere you want, but that defeats the point of having a huge game world in the first place. I really hate to say this, but compared to that electronic smack addiction World of Warcraft, every territory has different terrain, colours and monsters, and the fast travel system, while badly in need of an in-flight movie, at least gives the impression of a huge epic world. Oblivion by comparison might as well be entirely taking place in the same fucking meadow.
Seriously, why can you teleport back to your ship? Why can you teleport out of a cave or out of a building? Now, not only it kills any leftover immersion, but it also utterly destroys the sense of a scale too. And thus, Starfield actually becomes the smallest Bethesda game ever. So then why is Starfield actually laden with loading screens in the first place? Well, simple. Netimers, or as it's later known, Creation Engine. It was horrible in 2006 when they adopted it. And since then, Bethesda has done bare minimum to keep it going, and not more. At this point, even mentioning what Valve did to Quake Engine back in the day feels like punching down a literal placenta-dripping second trimester fetus. But Jesus fuck, Todd. Are you really that stingy that you don't want to use established engines just because you would have to share profits? Oh, but don't worry, we'll get into the technical stuff a little bit later. But this was the fourth major hint that Bethesda, in my eyes, didn't seem to know what the fuck they were doing. And it only got worse. So let's move on to the fucking story. Oh god, please kill me.
Oh, okay, now we come to the thing that I'm least confident in, and that is writing. And yes, technically I wrote this whole big review, but I don't feel that comfortable in the whole writing process myself. Regardless, the way I usually consume games and even movies is by turning off my brain. I usually don't engage it and just simply take in whatever information is given to me. So, what do you think has to happen that even I am forced to turn on my brain and listen and explain and think? Why the fuck is this goddamn boring slop in my face?
Now then, for those of you who didn't bother playing or paying attention, here's the main story of the Starfield in some seconds. You are Bobby the Miner. On your first day you commit so many OSHA violations touching everything that you start tripping balls and land yourself in a character creation screen. Apparently you found a Bionicle and the boss lady called a friendly gay explorer to come and pick it up. After arrival, the boss lady doesn't want the explorer to leave. Maybe because she wants to do a fuck on him or whatever, but she doesn't know. So you get the ship and an annoying robot that can spell your name.
Captain Assface.
Oh, and now be a super deluxe product placement for an extra fuck you. And to continue fucking you, this is not where the open world starts. Barrett, the best boy, enables Protocol Indigo, and so you can't go anywhere but the Constellation. After committing space pirate genocide, you finally arrive in New Atlantis. Sniffing every corner, plant, and randomly generated ass, you finally get to Postgrad Explorer's treehouse, with a special password watch, which you'll never see again. Now, let me steal a joke from Potential TV. After meeting the work-shy out-of-college intellectuals on an indefinite gap year, you're joined by the Space Delphine, and you go talk with Army Recruiter. He tells you about some random dude in Sol System carrying one of those space acid-inducing bionicles. To find him, you need to go to the second biggest city in the game. After a dialogue handjob with the bartender, you learn where the dude is. But first, you need a fake ship stealth mission. Then you take a detour to a space pirate-infested station and commit more space genocide. After which, you finally get a location of the random dude, and once you retrieve the Bionicle, you'll never see him again. Now, if I didn't know any better, it smells like padding gameplay and excessive bad writing. But moving on. After plugging Bionicle in the display case, you're finally a member of the work-shy post-grad student club. Now you meet Sam Coe, who didn't ask to be a single dad. You also get informed that Vlad the Impaler is looking for more artifacts in orbit. And you also get the word that Barrett, the best boy, is in trouble. Yep, that's right, it's time for contrived heist team assembly montage.
A heist artist, aka a hipster dick whose adventures are 60% putting a crew together and 40% revealing that the robbery already happened and he's not worth our time because he's a hack piece of shit. That's my hell, Morty. I hate heists so much, and the crew assemblies are the worst part.
With increasing amount of frustration and needless fetch questing, you finally get the dipshit club together. Only now, after literal hours, you finally get pointed to the Space Dragonborn Shout Temple, where you acquire the power. Then you go back to glorified fetch quest for Bionicles. After lifting off from sorriest and lamest cyberpunk city of Neon, with a Bionicle in tow, you are met with a complete alien ship. Is that a sign of intelligent alien life in Starfield? Nope! They call themselves Starfarts, and they too collect Bionicles. So now the ticking clock is on. Who's gonna be the first to collect the set? After tracking down some more Bionicles, Vladimir asks you to go to I and click on some panels, and afterwards off we go to collect the last artifact of the Act, which is held by the best character in the whole game, Petro, who is basically gone after this small interaction. Upon returning to Constellation's Lodge, you hear that something's wrong with the Eye, but you can't go there without placing the artifact, and then this happens. Alright, come on. Just the complexity of scene making. Your NPC needs to literally go in a place to be captured. So lame! Come on, Bethesda, what the fuck? Maybe I should just go and buy more meds or something. I don't know. Come on. There we go. Scene starts. And activate. Come on. Damn it! Wait, did my... Oh, and also this is where a hidden choice you make is gonna happen. If you go to the eye, or rather step outside of the lodge, you can't go back, which is the funniest thing in a bad way. Anyways, if you go to the eye, one of the characters in the lodge dies. If you stay in the lodge and fight your way out, one of the 4 characters in the eye dies. Either way, you're forced to do a chase sequence in New Atlantis. In writing terms, this is basically the low point of the end of Act 2. Up next, everyone's sad about the dead member, but who cares? Go fetch more bionicles. Then Matteo remembers Starfart's talking about unity, and he happens to remember that religious priest in the town is talking about that too. After talking with the priest, apparently all religions present in Starfield's universe are connected, and the dumbest thing happens.
Planets are often named by number. That second might mean the second planet in the system. If there really is a location the Pilgrim wanted us to find, those deuce... Was there anything else? Infinitum addendum. No systems named finite or add. That just leaves in and dumb. Yes, that's it. The second planet in Indum.
This is the moment my lobotomized brain kicked in and said, hold up! What did you say? No, it can't be this stupid. See, Bethesda managed to do one thing that no other game managed to do to this day. It made me turn on my brain and pay attention through sheer stupidity. This point is when I started analyzing why Starfield is boring and why the writing is horrible. Now, what I found was worse than I thought. But never mind that, let's continue. You fetch another piece of worthless information and then go to a random planet with semi-intelligent friendly bug aliens. Why are they friendly? It's not explained, and no, I'm not reading any of the in-game books. Fuck you. After completing horrible, unintuitive, and for the lack of better word, puzzle, we head to our next location and find Hunter's ship? But hold on, why? You go aboard the Starfart ship and plot twist, there are 2 of them. And the plot twist again. The Constellation member who died is the emissary Starfart, while the Hunter is the infinitum addendum idiot. And the plot twist again, there are multiple universes. Oh, fantastic, the garbage trope, here we come. Anyways, Hunter wants the artifact for himself to gain power from the Unity and do what he wants, while the emissary wants to control the artifact and let people in who they deem worthy. They tell you to go to the old Earth to pick up the last artifact. Oh wait, no, sorry, first you need to go to the moon, and then you're directed to the Earth. All the while the game is lore dumping like nobody's business. Plot twist! The grav drives that empower humanity to travel to distant star systems quickly caused Earth's magnetosphere to disappear. Yep, you heard me right. Oh, and the grav drives were invented by a time traveler from a different universe. Yep, I expected the story to go off the rails, but I didn't expect it to be this soon. Anyways, you retrieved the last bionicle from a NASA facility. I honestly still can't believe that Bethesda roped in NASA into this horrible game. But anyways, coming out, both Hunter and Emissary are waiting for you and offer you to side with one of them, or go in alone against both. Trust me, there are no consequences to this choice other than how much fighting you're gonna have to do in the final battle. Also, along the way you go to a universe-shifting facility that experimented with bionicles. It also has no meaningful consequences other than being mildly interesting. Okay, long last you've finally collected all the bionicles and you can enter the Unity. You fight whichever Starfart you didn't side with, or both of them, or if you got super lucky in a couple of dice rolls, you can skip the fight by convincing the opposition not to fight. And finally, you enter the Unity. A version of you stands in front of you and regurgitates the quote-unquote consequences of your story actions. And trust me, that's the best you're gonna get. Now, either fuck off into the Unity and reset the game, or go back to the previous universe and continue. Either which way, enjoy the grind, idiot. That's it. Much story, such wow. So, let's take a closer look at the themes and motifs of the game. Let's get elbow deep into the anus of this horny bull at the sperm collector and pull out the bullshit that Bethesda cooked up. So then, tone and motif. Well, gravity, zero-G, space dragonborn powers, all of them have a, well, hint at the gravity as the physical force. Well, I guess the best I can say is that it's sort of the force of attraction, which permeates into the story, kinda? But honestly, it's too far of a stretch for me to say that that was intentional, more of a coincidental. So gravity, grav drives, and blah blah blah, all of it is really just a set dressing. Maybe you could say that for tone or motif, repetition is a thing since the story is cyclical, but no, that doesn't really echo in the story either. Spaceships, NASA, discoveries, as well as the whole constellation is about space travel and exploration, and that could be tone and theme. Okay, for a space game, that's not too bad. So let's take a look at the choices the player is given. Emissary is about control, who gets to go into the Unity, while Hunter is about self-serving, fuck you dad, I do what I want! Now, my best guess is that Bethesda writers wanted to put in the philosophy of control versus self-determination, meaning the limited freedoms for greater good versus, well, the opposite. But you know, I don't think writers thought too hard about this whole thing, cause self-determination, choosing your own path, and obeying outside influence to greater good is not necessarily opposing ideologies. Even in basic terms of the face value, they don't seem that opposing as much. So then, of course, to make the choice more quote-unquote clever or hackneyed black and white, you make Hunter a psychotic self-absorbed murder maniac who values nothing but himself. While Emissary only kills out of necessity, but their collective sacrifices some liberties, which the game does not present any other way other than, well, Emissary told you. Why would you need to see that, right? Frankly, I don't want to waste your or my time explaining how basic and tilted this type of writing, pretending that you're much deeper than actually you are, is. So skipping to the results, it's basically extremely shallow non-choice. Now, as for the constellation, well, you feel like every character is supposed to represent something specific, but once more I ended up being bored out of mind as soon as I tried to explain as to why and what. So let's just take just a few of them. Let's take Barrett, for example, the gay widower with a smile as wide as the ocean. And he has interest in space magic. That's basically him in the constellation. He represents the liking of space magic. That's it. And not even that comes up in a meaningful way in the story. He even has this whole side quest where he gets a power, and basically he's just telling you about his life and not much more. Boy, do I like being told things. Well, for example, Space Delphine, the leader of Constellation, who was once in a rock band. Ooh, so rebellious, even though rock is the lamest, softest, blandest pop music ever. And contrary, she grew up in a religious household, so she's kind of a rebel there. And yet her passions are about exploration and science, which kinda is like Barrett's as well, but in a slightly different way. Basically, I quickly came to a conclusion that all these dipshit characters are two-dimensional cardboard cutouts with maybe 3 to 4 character traits. Their devotion, motivation, passions, all of them are super bland and surface level, while flaws, actually, come to think of it, flaws are almost non-existent, if at all. Take for example Sam Coe, the single dad, a very special rare breed even in this world. But the reason he's not together with the kid's mom is that she chose work over Sam, and also they never really matched.
Had a partner, Lillian Hearts. Well, we were like fire and ice, but well, it wasn't all bad.
But when the characters talk in the story, they do not reveal any kind of a flaw. There are no character flaws. It's just, well, we've drifted apart, or we didn't match. That's it. That's the story explanation why they are not together. And the same thing goes with Sam.
But I see so much of myself in her. I've done things I'm not proud of. Said things even worse.
What are they? And moreover, the reason why Sam is the black sheep of the Coe family is simply that he doesn't want to live up to the legacy, while his father wants to.
Well, well. Sam Coe finally decides to darken our doorstep again.
You know why I'm here.
Oh? And what's that? You come to your senses? Realize where you ought to be for once?
I ain't asking again.
You ain't asked once. Let's hear it. I want you to say the words about what's more important to you than family.
Okay, this was a mistake.
Oh really? This whole story's a mistake, damn it!
It's just actions that are being done and characters telling, oh, I don't like that you did that, but I did that because I wanted to. Oh no! Now we have conflict. Duh. That's the level of writing here! And you know, it's kind of funny that the game itself unintentionally is giving Sam a flaw. He's the biggest idiot, the least responsible or aware human being in the galaxy. See, he takes his child literally everywhere. That includes ship-to-ship combat. And yet the writers decided to just simply excuse it with this piddling squirt of nothing.
Oh, and since it tends to come up, me and my Rugrat co-pilot work as a team. That's
What?
non-negotiable.
Why?
If I'm coming with, that means Cora's on your ship.
Why?
You're probably wondering about Cora. I played it over in my head 1,000 times, and I've made up my mind. She's coming with.
Why?
I know what everyone's gonna say, but even if I told her no, she'd find some way on board that ship.
What kind of lazy writing is
And if we
this?
stayed behind, we'd both regret it. I know it seems crazy, towing her across the stars.
Oh,
but
you
I'm
don't
not
say!
exactly swimming with options here. Her mother...
Options? What
Like I said,
writing is
another
this?
story, another time. And what, have her
Any
raised by
more
Jacob,
lazy
my dad?
excuses, writers?
I'd sooner ship her off to Vladimir.
Adam Jensen, ladies and gentlemen. So don't get me started with the rest of the band of fuckwits. No real flaws, just some basic surface level passions around the artifacts or exploration of space. And thus, I say, it's empty character writing in their actions and flaws and everything. And worst of all, there is no philosophical choice. In fact, there is no real choice that matters in the game. Yet the writing in the game itself is trying to pretend and mask that, oh no, trust me, you to be who you want and do what you want. Well, that was the main story. Well, how about we get into the 4 main side quests, You see questline, space death clause happened. Scientist discovers the chromosome in DNA, and now they're called oh no, bleh. You go talk with a board of non-characters. Here you can downplay the problem and utterly mislead everyone. No, nothing special. Fuck it, let's sabotage this.
Hey, don't get bashful on me. So then, while the data you two have presented is compelling, I think we can safely say it's insufficient for the level of...
Oh, so it didn't matter. Oh my god, it didn't matter. Are you fucking kidding me?
Incident. Chief
Really?
Sergeant, what's happening?
You just wasted my time, game.
At the spaceport.
If only this game wouldn't have wasted my time with talking. No matter what I chose, literally this thing would happen and grant me access. Nope, space death clause happened. Illusion of choice. Fuck you! Kill couple of space deathclaw on nose, then assemble another fucking crew.
And the crew assemblies are the worst part.
Go to oh no source. Discover space deathclaws coming from space amoebas on crack cocaine. Go back to the board of non-characters and choose how to kill amoebas. Either choice doesn't impact the game until you go to Unity and you're told what happened. Now fuck you again. 3-star Rangers questline. You get drafted, kill war veterans who pester some farmers, investigate where they got the gear and meet the obvious bad guy, then investigate some more, find the last big group of loyal army veterans, kill them all with a blank face, learn that obvious bad guy is obviously bad, confront the bad guy, kill him or let him continue employing and feeding this company's employees. Again, no matter what you choose, the products, employees, or the company itself the bad guy had does not change. Fuck you. Ryujin questline. Just fuck you. And finally, the pirate questline. Get shafted as an undercover spy after stealing a teacup by a space idiot police. Infiltrate pirate fleet with such ease that even toddler could. Go into an old prison with a traitor in a group to learn about some big juicy pirate booty. You can't kill the traitor because fuck you, nor can you join the traitor in his schemes, so fuck you again. Search for some pirate booty clues. Then go on a couple of pirate missions where you can kill innocent civilians, and this is presented as a choice. If you get 2 murderers and willingly, mandatory, you have no choice, you have to go back and report to the space idiot police, they will disown you, and thus you're locked out of one of the endings of the questline. After completing all the pirate fetch quests, you find the pirate booty, either you side with the space idiot police or the soy boy pirates, and no matter which you choose, you get the same reward. And the other faction is hostile against you. And yes, this too does not matter. Don't you dare patronize me, you fucking cunts! That's the best you could do, Bethesda. Best you could do. Fuck you. So, did you notice what was wrong with my obviously biased summary? The illusion of choice. Now, like I mentioned with killing children, you can only kill named characters when the quest allows you, when the character has ceased its usability, and the consequences themselves of the quest endings or hell midstream basically do not exist. Oh, and it's also pretty funny that Space Pirate questline is the only point where in this game you can see somebody explode in giblets. Literally, this is the only instance. Murder, murder, don't care. Oh, baby! How sad is that? Oh, and speaking of the pirate questline, the closest thing to a choice that actually matters and could have some kind of consequences is when you attack the space idiot police. And they are about to self-destruct the megaship, and thanks to bounty hunter background, you convince them not to. Yep, that's the only case. And even that one's hollow. However, I smelled the illusion of choice a lot earlier. Now remember that UC questline where you talk with a council of non-characters and you're given a dialogue options that could completely undermine the Space Deathclaw problem? Well yeah, no matter what you choose, fuck you and triggering the Terramorph attack. At this point I knew, yep, this is a Bethesda hallmark garbage writing. No matter what I choose,
where you get to be who you want and go where you want.
This would happen, and Todd's a fucking liar, while his writers are fucking assholes, if not complete idiots. But let's move on. In the main story, you go to Neon with Stroud and you have the secret Bionicle purchase negotiation. Well, you're given an option to literally just grab the item without paying or convincing the seller. Grab the artifact.
You trying to steal from me?
Attack.
So that. Here.
Can I kill him?
Getting both. All right.
Seriously, I can't kill him?
Now get.
Fuck you, game.
It's over.
Like, oh, this is bull. There were 3 options, and none of them allowed me to kill him. So why give me that option to choose between 3 options? Fuck you, game. Unbelievable. And the same but opposite happens with Petro's Bionicle. You can't get it without triggering combat or getting into the vault, yet inside there are shootable doors that open an alternative way out, but not in. How fucking obvious is this? Wait, no, actually, after looking this up, there is a non-combat way. You have to shoot Petro in the head, then he surrenders and there's no combat triggering.
Jesus, what kind of backwards bullshit is this? I haven't even gotten to explaining why, what, or how. What the fuck?
Oh, come on, TheYamiks. Bethesda are not known for making good stories. Now are they? It's all about the open world.
Oh, sure, yeah, that is true. But the problem is, the open world itself, the side quests in it, are basically populated with nothing but, well, okay, 90% of fetch quests. Even the main story is that.
And you know, Generation Ship questline could have been like the Fallout Vault, where you enter and some bizarre experiment is happening inside, but nope, everything is fine, no moral or philosophical questions are raised. Yet, the player is given the weirdly bizarre responses to try and trigger pointless drama. Like seriously, this is the best you could do with writing? Are you serious?
So now we have to talk about the game's writing. Now, generally speaking, it's boring, and we all can say that easily. But the more I started wondering why it was boring, well, aside from the fact that the characters are constantly yammering at you, well, there were some other reasons that, were stupid, incompetent, and more, that made the whole story, oh boy, far worse than being boring. It made it bad. And boy, there's a lot of it.
Right then, let's start with the opening of the game. Now, you probably heard from some critics of Starfield say that, oh well, it's a slow burn, but you know, to get to the interesting bits in the story, like Kidney Stone, you're gonna have to pass 12 hours of playtime, or something obscene like that. Well, this is perfectly comparable to Skyrim. In Skyrim, aside from the long-ass wagon ride, you are sent to the chopping block as some kind of a almost routine. Then, out of nowhere, a motherfucking dragon flies in and the story starts out on a fun, exciting bang. You are given this rock-bottom starting point, a mystery about dragons, and quickly you come to realize that you are also something called a dragonborn with special magical powers. See, in the first 2 hours you are experiencing some truly cool things that propel you into this open world and the story. Now, granted, the story is also pretty poor, but that's beside the point. In Starfield, you go into dark, bland mines. Everything is slow and boring. You touch an artifact and a cutscene with flashing images to induce epilepsy are shown. And to this day, after finishing the game, it makes zero sense. It's just some artsy-fartsy bullshit. After you wake up, the characters are basically talking at you or past you. After the small encounter, you are given a ship, and that should be exciting, but simply is not. Thanks to loading screens and teleportation. Then you teleport to kill more pirates and then teleport into a big city. Congratulations. For the next 10 hours, forget about the space magic. Hell, even Fallout 4 opens in a bombastic way with exosuit and the fucking Deathclaw. Do you see how lackluster, slow, weirdly mundane this grind of an RPG about space ends up being? And the writing here is 90% at fault. Now, another bizarre writing issue I spotted during UC questline with the robot. See, story-wise, the robot knows apparently something crucial, which surprises our characters. However,
there are steam tunnels under the city, which will allow us to access the spaceport.
What do you... That's right. Kaiser, how did you know that?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Now, would a robot ever say that? Yeah, sure, you could say that I'm nitpicking, but it's kinda telling how capable the writer is, using specific words in the dialogues of the characters. See, the problem with this is that in Starfield's universe, robots are not intelligent, or at least not in the AI sort of a sense, because there is a mini-quest, encounter sort of a thing, that you actually find an actual AI that has been sentient for the first time ever.
Clarification. Context. Assumption. Request.
So me, as a player, as an observer, I'm left to think that okay, so that means that the robots are basic response machines and nothing much more. So a robot answering with "I'm not sure" is a human answer, not something a machine would say. Data not found, entry corrupted, access denied, source redacted. All these are perfectly fine robot answers. But no. This fucking robot has no intelligence! God, it pisses me off. The point is, much like previously, like I mentioned, there is neither consistency or thought placed behind characters, their traits or qualities, let alone flaws. And then it only gets worse with a good old tell, don't show. See, in TV and movies, there's this good old saying, show, don't tell, meaning that you have eyes, and thus you can showcase stuff. Hell, even in Naruto flashback sort of a sequence, rather than having a character recap the action in their words. You see, it's so much more powerful when you can see these events take place, or hell, in games even participate in them, you know. You can distinguish a good writer from a hack the more you see scenes that convey something, rather than being told. You see, it's easy to dump lore face to face, it's cheap too, and that's why it's disgusting, lazy, and incompetent. It's the fallback when your creative abilities prevent you from making something better. And boy, is Starfield full of this shit! Constantly, every character you interact with is lore dumping so much garbage writing that rightfully everyone's eyes are glazing over in the first hours of the game when you realize that this is the style of writing. See, I'm a novice at writing and all that stuff, but even I know brevity is the soul of wit. That, you know, that Shakes man once said. So what do you think the Starfield's constantly blabbering, pointlessly chattering NPCs are? You can even feel this padding in the slow pace of delivery of every single line with pauses in between. Just look at this waveform.
Oh, and not to mention the whole, hey, here's the camera in your face with multiple characters and then it just switches between them. You can't tell anything apart in the scene. God! Cyberpunk 2.0 and Phantom Liberty updates released during this time, and going back to them, it's just so blatant how much more effort CD Projekt Red put in the writing, optimizing it, and much more putting in animations as well as how your character responds, placement of characters in the scene, everything. It just feels masterful. And that's the thing, it's not. Yeah, sure, there's a little bit of cinematic flair to it, but it's not that special or masterful. But in comparison to Starfield's bullshit, where you rip out the camera, put it in medium profile shot with no animations or even transitions between multiple talkers, utterly destroying and shattering the sense of place, you get shit like this. Scenes, motherfucker, do you speak it? And at this point you can already tell that Starfield's writing and screenplay is completely devoid of creativity, and at this point it's almost insulting.
And then our designers are also our writers. So they start filling out a timeline. How did the universe get to where it is? In our version of it, what happened?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, not to say that it's impossible. Yeah, sure, but game designers are not creative writers. And then we have to come to the reason the writing is so bad. Now, well, obviously it's hard to determine who wrote what. Still, quite a bit of responsibility has to fall onto writers, and definitely, most especially, to the head writer of the game. In this case, Emil what's-his-face.
We use the iterative process. We make the game. We are very flexible with changing things. We are actually at a state now, in the development of the studio, we don't have a lot of extensive design documentation. We found that probably after we hit Fallout 3, the design docs that we had became outdated very quickly because we knew we needed to get stuff in the game and play it and then change it. We needed to iterate on it. So we would have these extensive 50-page design documents that were completely outdated, and the time it took to maintain those just wasn't worth it.
Now, after watching my fellow creators Kratos' critique of the man's writing and more, how he's been acting in public, how he's been deflecting critique of his own work for Fallout 3, 4, Skyrim and more, I frankly am convinced that in big part this man, like Kratos says, is utterly incompetent and might have just ruined Bethesda's games while failing upwards in Bethesda's ranks.
The next issue is the fact that you can't turn over any evidence to prove the fact that not only was Lucian innocent, but that the traitor is still alive. This is made exponentially worse when you drop the head, and he reacts to it, and you still can't expose him as being the traitor.
What? What is that? Is that a head? No, it can't be. Sorry, Speaker, I'm distracted.
You know he's the traitor. He reacts. They recorded specific, unique dialogue for this, and you still cannot do a goddamn thing about it. It's infuriating. I'll just focus on a couple shocking moments that are tied together by an incredible contrivance. At Project Purity, the Enclave invade and take over, and dear old dad sacrifices his life to prevent it from falling into their hands, killing everyone in the room, including their leader, Colonel Autumn. In the very next quest of any substance, he arrives at the end to kidnap you from Vault 87. This is treated as though it's a shocking moment that he's alive, considering everyone died. Except he didn't. As it turns out, Colonel Autumn injects himself with a mysterious something and collapses. This thing he injects himself with apparently gives him perfect radiation immunity, as it saves his life as everyone around him is dying, and he's fit as a goddamn fiddle here in Vault 87. Already, this is pretty bad, but this is made worse by the fact that he has no such item in his inventory at the end of the game, when it would be useful for him to have it, but he can't have it, because if the player kills him, that would ruin the whole idea of sacrificing yourself. But what if it's experimental? No, shut the fuck up. When you try to explain crap like this away based on nothing that's actually in the game, you're just doing the writing for the writers to excuse their lazy bullshit.
So then I won't repeat everything, but independently I came to very similar conclusions as Kratos'. But since he did such a nice work putting everything together, I do recommend you go check his stuff out. I'll leave a link down below.
Now, I was willing to let this one go, but then an article popped up on my resources list, and oh boy.
Oh, Starfield's lead designer says that players are disconnected how games are made? Oh yeah, players are disconnected, right? Because they don't make games, yeah? Now this already is a load of horseshit beyond belief, but then I looked at who made this sort of a statement, and look at that, our good friend Emil is here too. Jesus fucking Christ, this man has a history of being an idiot. And yes, this is the only time when I'll cross the line and call someone a fucking idiot. Funny how disconnected some players are from the realities of game development, and yet they speak with complete authority. When I was writing game reviews for Adrenaline Vault forever ago, I absolutely was the person who would say whatever they want about a game, good or bad. Sometimes the good was over-enthusiastic to good, and sometimes the bad was me being a sarcastic asshat. But throughout that time, I actually had no inkling what the game development was actually like, how hard the designers, programmers, artists, producers, and everyone else worked. The struggle to bringing vision to life with constantly shifting resources, the stress. So basically the crux of his rant here is that you have to understand game development and then you're gonna give a better score to the game review, or rather not be such an asshat. And because some of those players are disconnected and have no game development experience, they're just too mean, because they just simply don't understand fully. And yes, this is literally him implying that they're stupid. But that's not the only thing he says. I'm not trying to change anyone's mind because the internet, but given the position I can't not share the truth, and the truth is nobody sets out to make a bad game, and most game developers are incredibly talented, even if the game they release isn't up to par. Basically, for the next 3 pieces, he's trying to garner sympathy, and then concludes with, but don't fool yourself into thinking that you know why it is the way it is, unless it's somehow documented and verified, or how it got to be the way it is, good or bad. Chances are, unless you made a game yourself, you don't know who made certain decisions, who did specific work, how many people were actually available to do the work, any time challenges faced, or how often you had to overcome technology itself. This one is you. Just know that the game you're playing is in some ways a freaking miracle in of itself. Normal people have come together to work for years for one goal, to bring fun and happiness, so it helps to remember that, and them. Right, let me put the theatrics aside for a second there. Essentially, what Emil is trying to do here is essentially garner sympathy, empty sympathy at the backs of, well, essentially his team and nebulous, nondescript concepts as, well, we worked really hard on it, so how can you be so mean or so critical of this thing, you know? And honestly speaking, it's really disgusting. Essentially trying to use this sort of sympathy as your shield for criticism, whether it is warranted or not. What this amounts to essentially is him trying to avoid the responsibility for making a bad product by using that empty sympathy. And that is a disgusting part.
So let's say, okay, we're going to write the great American novel. It's going to be this thick. And on every page will be written comedy and tragedy, and it'll be wonderful, it'll be amazing. And you're gonna give this book, this great American novel, to the player. And what are they gonna do with it? They're gonna rip out every page and make paper airplanes out of them. And they're gonna throw them around the room. And they're never gonna see your story. Because the story is there, right? But they are gonna spend 30 hours making shacks. Okay? They're going to spend 20 hours looking for bobbleheads. Okay? But that's okay. We know that going in. That's the jagged pill that we swallow when we do this.
Am I so out of touch? No, it's the children who are wrong.
Jesus fucking Christ, how disconnected this guy is! Holy crap, if players are spending more time building, shooting, doing other things, then what the hell do you think the story is doing? Don't you think that it's your fault that the players don't care about it? Or, oh wait, no, sorry, you're gonna go and make a fucking patronizing joke afterwards, just further cementing how disconnected you are!
And then we have to talk about the Steam reviews, I guess. Soon after the launch, Bethesda, yes, the developers and the PR team, basically the customer support, started responding to negative reviews. Now, Why would they do that? Well, apparently Dusk developer David has mentioned that responding to negative reviews sometimes have turned around these reviews. And I get that. Through responding and understanding, explaining, well, you grow some sort of connection as well as just deeper knowledge of the game. However, Starfield responses were, shall we call them, very similar to Emil's attitude. Basically being very patronizing, even in my own. For example, if you feel that things are getting boring, there's so much more than just the main story, you know. Or take this one. While there may be loading screens in between the fast traveling, just consider the amount of data for the expansive gameplay that is procedurally generated to load flawlessly in under 3 seconds.
Because the true mark of being a real developer is, as every developer knows, is waiting for reviews to come in, right? And then reading the reviews, of course, and hopefully, if you get lucky, ignoring the reviews, right? Thank you very much, guys.
Oh, you condescending, out of touch, disconnected cunt!
Now, after realizing what the story of Starfield was and how it was made and who made it, essentially, frankly, I didn't even want to bother asking why. In the New Game Plus, your character travels back in time in the next universe, but at this point it's just sloppy explanation for the universe reset and lazy justification for the mechanics, which isn't the worst thing, but it's still stupid though. And now we have to talk about those gays, dykes, and otherkins and whatnot else. Yeah, it's time for us to talk about the wokeness. But hold on, is there even whatever people consider woke in Starfield?
Bethesda, I'm gonna say something to you. You should fucking listen. If you want to play pick your pronouns, then you should have an option to not enter pronouns. I'm more interested in what this has to do with us addressing the cabinet. I don't give a fuck about your pronouns
father
or who you
was
identify
executed for
as.
acts he committed during
Just
the
give
war.
me my space money
The man caused a
and
lot
my
of
space
death
experience.
on both sides.
With all of that laid out in front of me, I love nothing more than to be dragged out at every fucking conceivable opportunity so you can fucking current day us.
So then, this clip was passed around a lot on launch, and naturally, it is hilarious seeing an internet man-baby rage. But is he right? Is he wrong? So then, pronouns. You know, it's rather funny to me as an Eastern European, here in Latvia, see America, hell, even the UK, try to pander, and the key word here is pander, to the LGBT and other marginalized groups, especially in the last few years. See, I get what Babyface is at least trying to say, I guess, is that pandering, well, this sort of pandering from media has been going on for a while and often shoved in places that, well, didn't make sense or is completely unnecessary. However, then Babyface also mentions this.
Lose myself, think, oh my god, just think of this world, just think of all the planets I can visit. You take everything we love, all our immersions, all our fantasies, all our escapism, and you just can't help shovel your dog shit, fucking crap ideology into everything.
And, it's kinda telling. Yes, we can get annoyed about certain trends being shoved in our media, but that's kinda the thing. Just like Actman, who also made fun of Babyface later down the line, both of them seem to want games to be about escapism, devoid of social issues and trends of the time. And only that kind of politics that are either interesting or outlandish, so that's not too close to reality.
See, try as you might, you will never do that. There is this literary theory of death of the author. Basically, attempt to remove author from the text they wrote. Usually it's done because, hey, I like this piece of media, this movie, this book, or whatever, right? But the author is just a closeted asshole. So death of the author is essentially an attempt to say that, oh, well, yeah, the book is still good. Yeah, the author is a piece of shit, but I still like the book. And that's our way to kind of still try and like the piece of media that we used to with the same eyes. But that's the thing, we can't. We already know the part of the story that continues that is just, well, unsavory, and that ultimately ruins it no matter how you like it. And this is why the death of the author is just a futile attempt. And you see, the same thing goes with the author itself, right? The environment they grew up, whatever people they met, and more, wealth and status, all these things in fact influence all of us, myself, you, the viewer, and more, right? So taking out these social and political issues is just impossible. They subconsciously impact what we create and how we do it. See, when Babyface uses the escapism clause as some sort of a qualifier for what he wants to see in video games, well, it's utterly futile. Just like with the death of the author, it's just impossible to escape these social and political issues in any kind of piece of media that we make. Now, what matters is how these issues are acknowledged, incorporated, and actually presented. I will take any kind of ideology as long as it's interestingly portrayed. It might be completely wrong, but it can be also really interesting and fun.
Maybe there are others like you around. Maybe you've caused a lot of suffering, a lot of history, but that's all over.
That pretty much goes with everything. Hell, even cannibalism. But that's beside the point.
So you can fucking current day us!
So he's mad that he can't apply death of the author, or that the real world has stepped into the piece of media that has been shaped by the real world. You know, for some reason it seems that he had some weird expectations from Starfield, and that once they didn't align, or featured something he didn't like, he, as the kids say, got triggered. Oh, and of course there's the current day being used as an adjective. I suppose I haven't lived in 4chan for my whole life, so I can only hazard a guess what that may mean.
Fucking current day Californian shit! Cause that's all we fucking know! Cause we're boring! We're so fucking boring!
Now, Babyface is right about the pronouns and LGBT details like Barrett being gay, every romanceable character is being bi, and even less noticeable details like, for example, that chick from the Generation ship after leaving for New Atlantis finds one of those they-them partners. It kind of feels needlessly shoved in. But then he gets wildly angry and starts yelling that doing so is boring.
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Again, he's not exactly wrong about Starfield or Bethesda being boring, however, I don't think that's the reason he's yelling. See, I sense that he wanted to yell out some other words in his impotent rage, like woke, disgusting, stupid, trend-chasing, pandering, but choose the word boring. So, tell me, would you get so angry over something that is boring? Well, I don't think so. Then he mentions narcissism for some reason and short-sightedness in Bethesda's case. Again, bizarre choice of words. It feels more like token buzzwords he heard somewhere out there, so he yelled them out without much of a second thought. And you know, I can sympathize, I too like to go on rants and be angry. But English not being my first language, I do struggle with it quite a bit. So I do try to put a bit more thought behind what I say. You know, worth a thought. But you know, I don't want to examine the man's mindset too much here, but to me this basically reads like somebody who saw a little detail that sparked, you know, one of those triggered associations from the real world overuse of a certain social trend that they didn't seem to like being shoved everywhere, and that's about it. You know, no real thinking process behind it, just some impotent rage. And yeah, it does deserve a little bit of clowning on, because it is stupid. Alright, so now we have to talk about the wokeness in a more serious way. Right, so, this sort of impotent rage that, for example, Babyface is pushing out is just basically a pathetic child's temper tantrum and nothing more. Now, you can kinda understand a couple of these people. Some of them are really against the liberal LGBT agenda and whatnot else. Some of them are just simply annoyed by constantly seeing, oh, this character's gay, that one's an attack chopper, whatnot else. Sure, but the problem is, when they're trying to explain why it's bad, like for example Babyface, they end up just basically shouting out some weird, bizarre terms, buzzwords, and, well, words they literally read in Thesaurus yesterday. So it all ends up being a rage-filled nonsense drivel of retarded, like mentally deficient ramblings. And so if we engage our brains for a little bit and think about why these things are placed in our media. For the most part, There is no agenda, there really isn't. Do you really think that Bethesda is trying to push some sort of feminist ideology through that one mug? Or that they're trying to push the, those they-thems through the fucking pronoun option? Really? Or that, the gays are everywhere, oh, they're gonna get ya. Really? Are you really that scared? No. If you think about it, it's clear what, this and many other companies are doing. Well, they're pandering. They're clearly pandering. And by that I mean they're literally just putting in a detail here and there just to look like they're accepting, look like they're welcoming, without actually delving into the ideology, taking in some sort of example or presenting an idea. No, it's just purely to trick the stupid people, clearly. And, well, look at that. It has worked, hasn't it? And that goes on both ends, both for those who support and those who stand against these insertions and other things. So let me address the other side of things, the Technicolor Rainbow and its champions. Now, tell me, do you feel welcome? Do you feel included? Do you feel happy that you're being represented like this? With a single fucking button, or a character saying that they had a husband or something like that. Or perhaps even a mug for your ideals, right? For feminists there. Do you feel happy for that? Do you feel welcome? I do wonder, because let's say I personally was another kin or something weird as that, right? Ooh. Honestly, I would feel insulted that the company would just simply use this, drapings essentially to sell a product without exploring or giving some sort of interesting twist on, self-identity. That could be interesting, but no. What they ended up being is just pandering. That's all it is. Empty, shallow, vapid pandering. You're happy for that? I would be insulted. And it's the funniest thing when I hear people say that, I don't want games with politics or social problems. I want my games about escapism. And that's just the stupidest thing. And yes, a couple of my friends have said that. And to you especially, I say, that's fucking stupid. Trying to avoid social and political problems in any kind of piece of media or any kind of work we make is really just tempting luck, I guess. But ultimately, it's impossible. In fact, it is far more interesting and engaging to actually explore these problems, the difficulties the other side is trying to face, even if you disagree with it. And that's actually often more interesting. For example, I absolutely hate religion. Like, I despise it to the last one. Superstition too, very much so. But oftentimes it is interesting to engage in at least a thought process to see what they're saying, how they're saying, and what sort of perspective they're coming from, why they might be wrong, and what values they might still impart. And that's the thing. Through understanding, we could actually grow, learn, and indeed come to a better, world in a way. But no, there is, of course, the pandering of the, companies trying to just simply goad people into, giving them faint praises and thumbs up. And then there are, of course, the weirdos who are shouting back, calling it woke left and right. And oftentimes, it's a nebulous term, but ultimately it is just pandering, and there's the backlash to it. And then there are the backlash to the backlash, either which way, and all that stuff. Ultimately, it's just vapid shit that is being pushed onto us. I would welcome a far more interesting, engaging exploration of self-identity. In fact, that would probably be the most interesting thing in Starfield, but regardless, in any kind of a game. In fact, one of my favorite games of, fish out of water for me was Hellblade, right? I think it was the psychosis illness, right? And it's, was it illness condition? Well, again, forgive me, but ultimately, it was fascinating to learn about it. They did a fantastic job presenting this problem and, this condition. And it just utterly made me a fan. And yeah, sure, I don't know how it feels, but it gave me a little bit of at least appreciation and understanding. And the same thing goes with even things I don't like, and even things that I like. Maybe I'll view them in a different way, as long as they're explored and engaged and incorporated fully, rather than just simply slap a coating on it and be done for the day, just for some nebulous internet updo. Right? Let's talk about ideas, rather than just impotent rage about bullshit and childish temper tantrums like goddamn men babies. Fucking pathetic. Oh, fuck me, let it end. What else we got? Oh, right. Starfield is also the most sanitized cookie-cutter game I've ever played. So then, there is no more extreme gore, like gibbing of enemies. You know, stuff that Fallout 3 was so overwhelmingly praised for. And yes, you can kinda say that Wokeness had to do something with it. I mean, if you're trying to appeal to a big crowd, at least as big as possible, well, you're not gonna end up pleasing anyone, now will you? And thus, sanitization continues.
My parents considered themselves to be enlightened, but their lives were so busy they rarely pursued their beliefs. By the time I was old enough to start questioning these things, the idea of following any organized religion was almost an afterthought. It's not that I don't want to believe in anything, it's that my scientific mind is often at odds with my spiritual center. Having been out there, in the Starfield, seeing all those magnificent wonders with my own eyes, I need answers, not religious theory. I'm sorry if that disappoints you, but don't worry. While we're on this journey together, I fully intend to respect your religious beliefs.
Oh, gods forbid that we have a character that takes stand in the religion debate. Unless, of course, we have a cultist, which of course you're gonna shoot. Do you see what I mean about pandering? This is textbook pandering. It's Panderfield, yay! And as the result, the game has zero edge, zero things to say about itself, and in the end becomes boring. Like proper boring, not whatever babyface was yelling about incoherently. However, as I have explored thusly, it's done in the most incompetent, cynical and lazy way as possible, that it becomes not just bad, but horrible. So, let me quote Simone Weil. Imaginary evil is romantic and varied, real evil is gloomy, monotone, barren, boring. Imaginary good is boring, real good is always marvelous, intoxicating. You know, this was the 5th point where I realized that Bethesda didn't know what the fuck they were doing. But if that quote has a grain of truth, well, they might just be evil on top. Oh god, I'm not done yet. It's 2 hours already. Oh, fuck this game. Okay, so fine. Audio stuff. Generally speaking, it's not offensive. It does what it's set out to do. There's nothing special about it, unlike Skyrim or even Fallout. So, it's okay. I guess most notable part is that voice actors basically carry the game at this point, aside from maybe FPS gameplay and ship gameplay. Another interesting thing I noticed about Bethesda was that they basically use music instead of ambient noise or ambient soundscape creation. Essentially, in all of their games, if you listen closely, basically the environment doesn't produce much noise when it comes to doors swinging open or just some random bushes or wind going by. There is a little bit of it, sure, but the music is constantly turned on a bit more than that, so that you kind of forget that it's empty, and if you turn off the music, all of a sudden the environment becomes so much more emptier. It's a cheap, lazy way of putting in the tone at every step when you're traveling or going anywhere. Right, and let's talk about the technology and technical stuff. The performance, execution technologies, and the lack thereof, I guess. Oh boy, here we go.
It is a next-gen PC game.
Oh yeah, Todd. Starfield is so next-gen that you can't make fully walkable planets like Star Citizen, Elite Dangerous, No Man's Sky, Space Engineers, and a few more that I forget. A decade ago. Oh, whoops.
It is a next-gen PC game.
Oh yeah, Todd, Starfield is so next-gen that you need to go into fucking orbit to go a few kilometers to the left or right.
It is a next-gen PC game.
Oh yeah, Starfield's so next-gen that you need a loading screen to enter a ship.
It is a next-gen PC game.
Oh yeah, Starfield's so next-gen that you need loading screens for single-room shops in your biggest city ever.
It is a next-gen PC game.
And you know, Starfield's so next-gen that elevators too need to be teleporters inside the same map.
Our next-generation lighting model uses real-time global illumination to light the world based on the type of star and the makeup of the planet's atmosphere.
Oh, you mean the technology from early 2000s? Oh, wow, very next-gen, Todd.
So, how about we get into the game's options? That's the first menu I usually click, and I change a couple of things. For example, anti-aliasing is always off, and FSR and all that stuff is also off. And, well, this is where we kind of have problems already.
Starfield generally provided weird and frankly pathetic amount of settings when it came out that didn't help the user to properly adjust the game's performance according to their hardware. No texture slider, no anti-aliasing slider, no FOV slider on launch. However, now they added it and put it in accessibility, not graphics. No mesh complexity sliders, no level detail sliders. Yet there are 4 options for shadows and shadow effects. And there's no graphical comparison screen either. It's utterly bizarre.
Nay, but TheYamiks, Bethesda is not known to be a super technical company. Besides, they make games for consoles. So expecting a great deal of settings is just unreasonable.
Making a game look certain way, well, okay, yeah, that is possible. However, there are issues with performance that we'll get into, so having setting sliders, say, for post-processing effects like, oh, I don't know, anti-aliasing that consumes sometimes a lot of processing powers, it doesn't change the visual look of the game, should exist no matter the game. However, Starfield is the so-called AAA game. And these types of games often push the limits of both visuals as well as make sure that at least the widest audience can still play it, hence the need for lower performance settings. As for Bethesda being not known for technical stuff, oh yes, we all know how broken, glitchy, slapdash their games tend to be, including the technical execution, but that does not give them excuse to simply be neglectful in the simplest aspects of software development at all. Settings, for example, are free, well, in a way. It often comes down to developer not wanting to include them out of laziness, not because they are too hard. The most important thing here is that Bethesda is a big company with $200 million budget for this game, and you are telling me that you're too lazy to include the fucking FOV slider on launch? As well as many other ones? Were they too preoccupied sucking each other's dicks and sniffing farts to include preview tooltips, like say other AAA games? Is it not their responsibility or duty as a AAA developer to uphold at least some kind of standard? Oh, but forgive me, Todd Howard still chooses to call this game.
It is a next-gen PC game.
So, tell me, Todd, what is so next-gen about it? What the fuck does next-gen even mean? You know, console peasantry has generations, but everyone else on PC, well, we don't have this bullshit terminology. No, seriously, what the fuck does next-gen even mean? Seriously, I've been racking my brain trying to figure out what the hell it is. But okay, let's be honest, we all know what it is. Empty, meaningless buzzwords for idiots in the crowd. However, not so easily weaselable out of is gonna be this clip.
Why did you not optimize this game for PC?
We did. It's running great. It is a next-gen PC game.
So then, first things first, on the first day and even now, Starfield's performance on the lowest settings or the highest ones, doesn't matter, is not representative of what you are seeing. Meaning that the game looks like ass and it runs like it too. Now, to put it in perspective, the best GPU right now on the market is RTX 4090. Starfield on it runs about 100 FPS on the high preset according to Gamers Nexus at 1080p. Sounds great, doesn't it? Well, in an echo chamber, I guess it could. But then you look on, I don't know, a game called, Cyberpunk. It too runs 100 FPS on the same tier graphics card, but with ray tracing turned on. Without it, it's about 50 to 70% faster, meaning 170 FPS without ray tracing, according to TechSpot. Now, clearly, Cyberpunk seems to have a little bit less details, especially in the faces and a few other meshes, and I'll concede that easily, but the overall environment, I suspect, is about comparable polygon count-wise. Subjectively speaking, of course, Cyberpunk's art style definitely pops a lot more with the contrasty world and what it does, which only speaks volumes on how you don't need necessarily more polygons to have a visually better game. Now, my point here is that Starfield, beside the bland art style, is getting a lower frame rate than approximate equal game with the same hardware. And yeah, I know about the frame rates in different games and blah blah blah. Anyways, when you look worse and you play worse, what the hell is the customer supposed to think?
Hey, what are you complaining about? I'm getting 60 FPS easily. And hey, getting some 100 FPS is really good. I mean, who cares if you get 20 or 40 FPS more in some other complexly similar game, right?
And that's the problem. The tech-illiterate idiots out there are constantly using this bullshit as if it makes sense. And like I've said about unoptimized games for years, getting 60 FPS is not a sign of optimization. When you're running it on top-spec hardware, optimization is a sign when all hardware runs better. Sure, Todd might have not lied about Starfield not being optimized, but at some point you have to ask, do you really need so much fucking detail in food or character faces when you can barely emote them or animate them?
I think if you look at your audience, they get used to a game and they usually want to plus one it. They want to add X, Y, and Z, and the developers usually do, we do as well.
Are we, the developers, actually driving this need for more complexity? Is it players? Is it reviewers? Where do you think this is coming from?
Well, I think it starts with the developers. I mean, it has to, right?
Yeah, true. We do.
And I think it starts with technology. You know, you're seeing new hardware. You're wanting to use it in new ways. You're looking at demos like, oh, we could do this, we could do this, we could present it in this way.
And it wasn't until now that we had the technology to create it.
You know what I suspect happened here? Well, Bethesda artists were given a task to pump the level polygon counts, especially faces, because I think that was the only way they thought to increase the quote-unquote quality of the game's visuals. It would be like me putting exorbitant amount of transitions in my videos between the clips. Yeah, it gives that perceived idea that it's better, but it really isn't. But hey, it does trick idiots who can't see past the dazzling exterior. Like watching Marvel or DC movies. And there is one interesting thing that I noticed in the settings of the game. Shadows control the rendering quality of everything around you. It's kind of bizarre, because setting the shadows on the lowest setting inside the Atlantis and then putting it on Ultra immediately increases the quality of the fucking textures and models and, well, the visuals generally. Why? Well, I kinda know why. They smooshed multiple settings together in one setting, so there you go. And so finally, let's talk about the AMD deal. Do you remember it? Well, yeah, Starfield partnered with AMD, and some people were angry because, that might have meant that Starfield would be blocked from using DLSS. And wouldn't you know it, on the launch, DLSS, or the Intel's version XeSS, whatever it was called, the competitor technologies were not present. Here we once more come to the old argument. Starfield is a massive $200 million budget game. They are a high-profile company making high-profile product. Is it not their duty and responsibility to accommodate the new tech and technologies, especially when it comes to easy-to-implement upscaling crutches like these features? Though, it's kind of funny that on the first week, a notable mod creator by the name Pure Dark released a modification for the game that, oh, guess what, implemented DLSS and XeSS in the first week. Oh, wait, no, hold on, let me check. Oh, wait, no, that was the next day!
Here I found, much like Daniel, that there was a huge advantage on the AMD card. It's 46% faster than the RTX 3080. Another thing that I was able to replicate in my testing was something Daniel also noted. Take note of the frame time graph there on the RTX 3080. Notice how the frame times get really spiky when moving around. Daniel saw this same behavior in his testing. Frame times in this game are poorer on ultra settings on NVIDIA GPUs, and it gets worse the slower the GPU is.
Why did you not optimize this game for PC?
We did.
So, yeah, well, let's be frank here. The unspoken understandings do exist, after all. Oh, but speaking of that mod creator, later he paywalled a better DLSS version implementation. Then it immediately got pirated. In response to that, Pure Dark promised to booby-trap his next mods. Then the backlash happened, and then he retracted it. Jesus Christ, man. Oh, but speaking of paid mods, Bethesda is still trying to push the Creation Club, their paid mod thing, where they're basically trying to take money from the modders by doing absolutely nothing. And of course, the system itself doesn't really disclose what the percentage is gonna be, so have fun with that. Yeah, fuck you, Bethesda.
Ultimately, Starfield visually just simply looks uninspired. Boring is almost a word that has lost all meaning during this review, but regardless, it's just not interesting. It's just bland, if you will. And you compare it with something like Cyberpunk, and it definitely shows how, well, uninteresting, eye-catching it really is. Unless, of course, we're talking about those pedestrians. Oh boy! Yeah, those faces are unique, to say the least. But the point is, even compared to Cyberpunk, or hell, even Skyrim in a way, yeah, Starfield just simply doesn't have that, well, magic. It's kind of hard to describe, I suppose, but the word interesting certainly is a thing. But performance-wise, the Bethesda's latest squirting, if you will, is, yeah, bug-free, or at least the least bug-less of the Bethesda games, and certainly it is more consistent as well. However, when it comes to performance itself, you know, the frame rates you're getting, the overall performance is just far too low than it should be on any kind of hardware. It doesn't matter if it's 4090 or is it 1060. No, if you can run it on it.
It is a next-gen PC game.
Right then, well now we have to discuss the obvious, most glaring technical problem that utterly destroyed whatever fun there was in Starfield's gameplay. The loading screens. The constant fucking loading screens. Now, I already mentioned how they break immersion, how they are utterly backwards devolving tech leftover from an engine that's been on life support since day one. But why? Why are there so many loading screens? Well, obviously because developer could not introduce asset streaming. Generally speaking, a technique where the game loads and unloads assets from memory into the RAM and GPU, as the player is simply playing along. See, back in the day, this sort of a technology wasn't really possible due to slow hardware and some software limitations primarily. But then, why is Bethesda Creation Engine not applying this method of dynamic asset streaming? Well, that's kinda the funny thing. There is something happening.
Right then, well, so this is a horse ripper, or at least what I basically made it out to be. Focus, you damn bastard. Right, so this is piece of ancient history hardware, called hard drive. Yes, it's spinning flutters, blah 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 blah. Anyways, that's where I put the Starfield on, and it's gonna take a while. Right then, Starfield on the hard drive. It's an interesting beast. Yeah, frame rate doesn't seem to be too much off from the SSD version, which is, you know, what you'd expect. After all, it's just loading times and that's it, especially for a closed-off map that you load in rather than being asset streamed. Regardless, the interesting thing I noticed was audio cutouts on a hard drive. And, well, when you're looking at literally a static scene, you know, nothing is happening, right? So it's still loading in something constantly, and not a little amount. It's 13 megabytes a second from time to time, a spike here and there. Weird little things, to say the least. Technically, it shouldn't be even touching anything here. Let's see what happens when you start moving. So I'm moving, and yep, the numbers are, yep, oh yeah, there we go, 410, yeah, it'll spike. Let's see, let's run a little bit, and 17, just, why, 30, why, in a closed off map that you load in,
But the thing is, it was even worse on the launch. I found a video of somebody actually trying a hard drive on the launch version of Starfield.
As for the actual gameplay, well, it was quite stuttery. There were random freezes, of which lasted different amounts of time. Sometimes it would be a couple of milliseconds before gameplay resumed as normal, and sometimes I thought the game had frozen completely. It never did though, which I am happy to report.
Right then, this is CD Projekt Red's Cyberpunk, the open world Watchman has it. Now, I did try and see what performance on the hard drive would this game be. You know, it has asset streaming. It loads in the game world as you're traversing through it without any loading screens, unless you're, fast traveling somewhere. Then it takes a moment. But, come on, focus! I said there we go. 0.0% and 0.0%. I made sure it was installed on hard drive. But either it's not reporting the drive activity or it's just simply using so little of it. No, can't be. Because even when it just started, you saw it. There was no activity. So, I think it's underreporting. Anyways, point is, before this, I did try it. That's why I know the difference between an asset stream game and the usage of hard drive for Starfield. The differences. Before the 2.0 update, I tested Cyberpunk, and its drive usage from SSD was around 4 to 8 maximum. Megabytes a second at one point as you're traversing through the landscape. And even then, it's very, very little of it. When you're standing still, like right now, you would definitely see the numbers of 0, absolute 0. And that's the difference. You load in everything you need in your memory, RAM and graphics memory, and use that. Rather than constantly need to shift it from the fucking storage. That's why Starfield, at least in my opinion, just can't do hard drives.
Now, this is how an optimized game looks like. Well, okay, sorry, no, the Cyberpunk is not exactly optimized. It's lacking in many places, I can tell you that, even today, after the launch. So then, what does that make Starfield in comparison? What conclusion can we get from Starfield's obscene storage usage?
Why did you not optimize this game for PC?
We did.
Oh yeah, I don't think so. And out of curiosity, I looked up how a version of asset streaming can be implemented in a game. And you know what I found? This indie solo developer did it himself.
But as I've been putting the game world together, it's gotten pretty big. Here's the entire demo area, and here's the rest of the game world. It's quite a bit bigger. There are no loading screens and no camera cuts once you're in the game, and for a while it was fine to just keep the whole world loaded at all times, but now it's getting to be a bit of a problem. RAM is skyrocketing with 9 terrains, 2,500 rocks, and 6.7 million quads of grass in the game. I know because, well, I counted. 145, 146. The goal is to implement something called world streaming, breaking the world into smaller segments and asynchronously streaming them in and out of memory as needed. There are some assets available for this, but there's a lot of room for optimization with a custom solution, so that's the plan. All in all, I'm finding the whole streaming system works really well with my workflow, and it's something I'll likely incorporate from day one of my next game. The editor is also much snappier than before when the entire game was one massive scene file, and I'm keeping the subscenes really tight, they're easy to reason about, and the memory footprint is kept in check.
Is it comparable? Well, to a certain point it is. What's more bizarre is Bethesda spent over 10 to 8 years on Starfield's development with over $200 million budget, and the engine is still garbage trash fire. But the reason Starfield needs these immersion and gameplay destroying loading screens is simple. They have no proper asset streaming, so they can't have this seamless world, this seamless gameplay, and they haven't implemented it because of one or two reasons, I think. Sheer incompetence. They have no capable software engineers who can do it, or the engine itself is beyond the point of salvage. Or Bethesda just don't see the value in seamless immersive gameplay, and much rather rely upon the feelings of being an astronaut to carry them, aka being lazy.
And you know what Starfield makes me feel, Todd? It makes me feel like I'm playing a loading screen simulator, Todd!
The engine is done, it's garbage. I seriously suspect that the reason they're still using it rather than making a new one is that Bethesda has never done it. It's too expensive and maybe again, software developers are just too inexperienced to do it in the first place. And of course, taking in Unity, Unreal, Godot or some other third-party one costs them royalties, and Todd and Bethesda didn't get to be as influential by sharing with anyone, now did they? And you know, it's very funny I say that, because Bethesda sure as hell will be willing to share profits as long as you, the idiot modders, are making money for them in their creation club now. Won't they, eh? Oh, and here's a little side note as well. Under my quote-unquote review, some people claim that, well, they're still using the same engine because, well, it makes modding it easier because modders already know how to work in it and so on and so forth. No, trust me, it's not. You can make the same accessibility for any engine as long as you actually develop it. And creation engine hooks, I don't really think are that particularly good either. And speaking of mods
are a whole nother world, you know, how fast that community gets going. So, yeah.
So yeah, Bethesda are aware that their games have possibly the biggest modding communities out there. While they're not exactly saying it out loud, we kinda know this Bethesda mentality. Mods will fix that! And thus I think the whole hands-off approach for their single-player games comes in. That's why they release very few patches or updates to fix anything. Cause why bother, right? And this is in very stark contrast to Fallout 76, with its update cadence when it came out, because, well, guess what? It's a live service game and modding it, well, really wasn't possible now, was it? And they had to fix their own shit for once. Now, of course, this is nothing more than just conjecture, but you can't but to help and think, what if they really are relying on mods this much to fix the shit or make their games fun? Then it makes it funnier when Skyrim Together modders utterly gave up on Starfield's version of it, just due to how bland the game was.
And generally, that's the Starfield in one small little review. Now, of course, if I went into deeper detail, we'd be here forever, so anyways. Point is, what I expected originally from Starfield was kinda crappy story, which is typical of Bethesda, but at least, hey, the open world would be really nice, and casual gameplay. Now, what I came out of realizing after this big extrapolation of just interesting ideas and analysis, if you will, my conclusions have changed, and they are far wider reaching than beyond just Starfield. It's about Bethesda itself. But before we get into it, let's recap.
For the first time in literally 20 years, Bethesda made a passable FPS mechanics. And that's also the best quality of the game too. I mean, it's passable, as in there is bloom while you're aiming down sights with guns, AI is pretty stupid and tanky, so the word passable is all you're gonna get and you're gonna like it. Starfield is made grindy on purpose, utterly ruining the game's structure and progression, just so you can play a long time like a fucking idiot. Enjoy the slop, you fucking pig! This clearly is an idiotic attempt to make Skyrim that they can exploit for even longer. Then the story and the tone of the game is utterly sanitized to a point that it's the least offensive, least thought-provoking thing possible. I mean, you can't kill children, and that's just pathetic. But on a serious note, you can't kill any NPC with a name. And when it comes to the characters themselves, they all are written to be the least offensive and least engaging slabs of concrete that lack any character in the first place. In many regards, Starfield has stagnated too. Now, while generally aside from the planet tech, I seldom can name any new features added to the game list. All the while features from the old games have regressed and devolved, like there is no swimming, no full body looting, no gore or dismemberment, space dragonborn shrines are all exactly the same, and no real random encounters. Unless of course your standards are so low you're gonna call those forced, spawned in space encounters or generated planet points of interest real encounters. Oh, and let's not forget about the gays. Yeah, gays, you like being patronized and exploited for quick up dudes, don't ya? Well, look no further. Starfield includes your Technicolor rainbow just so you can think that you are included without exploring any interesting ideas about your self-identity. So fuck you and get pandered to. Now give us money, gays! And of course, the most crucial part of Bethesda's games, the open world, is absolutely ruined by Bethesda's technical limitations and archaic, decrepit engine, which I suspect that they are primarily using because they don't want to share royalties with real engine developers, so loading screens are literally everywhere, even including for single-room shops. Then go on a stage in public platforms and call this archaic amalgamation of ancient game design, coding, and story writing next gen, while patronizing, gaslighting, and looking down on anyone who calls the game bad by saying, "Well, you don't know how games are made, idiot." What's more, the game designers, rather than learning from the industry or even their own modding community, stick to 2 decades old game design, which wasn't even good at the time, and proceed to coast on their leftover goodwill from Fallout 3 and Skyrim, which today is in short supply.
But then I realized that, well, Starfield is worse than being bad. It's boring. And then as I started analyzing as to why it was boring, it's constantly talking characters just yammering on and non-stopping, just lore dumping ad nauseum. Well, I realized more than just that it's both bad and boring. In fact, it's made worse because there's both of them. And there are layers to both.
You know, something's been at the back of my mind since I played Fallout 3. Bethesda can't even make passable games anymore. Now, back in the day, you could make a janky-ass game, but with some fun and interesting mechanics here and there and story, I suppose. Take Skyrim, Oblivion, and even Fallout 3. But since then, they've been coasting on the goodwill and numerous Skyrim sales. Bethesda doesn't make good open worlds anymore, and it was clear with Fallout 4 a little, but certainly with 76 and definitely now with Starfield. More than that, Bethesda is an insular company that'll do the bare minimum at that, attempting to monetize mods, fuck the customer over, and then call you fucking idiot for not liking things. And you know, through this review alone, I've come to a new conclusion. Bethesda is genuinely bad. If not evil company. They are uncreative, exploitative, irresponsible assholes. And whatever public personas we got to see, they are disconnected clowns, like Emil and Todd. What's more, in retrospect, besides maybe Oblivion, Skyrim, and Arena in kind of a way, Bethesda has not made a good game. In fact, I've grown to hate their games now because of this. All because of Starfield, which made me turn on my brain and examine the story, game design, and even technical coding. I've learned this thanks to Starfield. So thanks Starfield, and fuck you Bethesda!
So there you go, that's my conclusion, and honestly speaking I didn't expect to arrive here as I did, but the more I looked into how, what and why, the worse it only got. Bethesda just simply makes bad games, pure and simple. And the thing is, with Skyrim, the only one that I kinda like, well, that too has waned in its luster for me, but you know, that's the thing. The more I understand, the more I see behind the veil, well, things change. But that's beside the point. I originally started scripting this whole thing on mid-December or something like that, and it's been taking me, oh god, over 3 weeks to make this. So, if you too want to come and support the stuff I do, well, especially these sorts of massive things, well, join the list of wonderful patrons right here, the wonderful bunch like that. But that's it. Bethesda bad, their game's bad, fuck Starfield, I'm moving on.